And look at that. We are live with today's pre-show of our SY0-701 study group. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat room. It is our last live stream of the calendar year. How about that? The holiday begins in about 2 hours. In about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Or somewhere in there. I don't even have my headphones in. Hello, Mal. Good to see you. How are things? I hope things are well. We've got a lot to go through today with Security Plus, all new questions for you, so stand by for that. And of course, we'll take your questions in the after show. There's the link. You can go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can put your virtual pin in our digital pin cushion that we have here. This is, what does that look like? Looks like that. That's what it looks like. Oh boy, we have... I'm trying to get my act together. There we go. That looks good. Maybe we could actually have that on the screen. I can look over my shoulder, see what's going on. I'm checking out the chat. Hello, chat. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. It's always fun. We do a Security Plus study group. It is our last study group of the year. It is the last study group of 2025. What a year this has been. Looking forward to kind of taking the last couple weeks of the month. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to, in fact, I'm just going to sit here for the next 2 weeks and we'll make that happen. But we've got a bunch of stuff planned for 2026. It's going to be so much fun. So we're really looking forward to that. It's been such a nice to look back on 2025, but it's also nice to look to see what may be coming in 2026. It's all good. And there's all kinds of interesting holiday things going on right now. I get such good news in my streams. I get good messages from people on our Discord. People are taking their exams or passing their exams. That's always a lot of fun. All right, we are off here. Let me check my cameras. Those look good. Streaming numbers are fine. We are recording. You can't really see it very well. It's down here. There's my Cylons going back and forth. I need one more recording system, both as a backup and to do some other things with. So I need to get on the stick. I need to get motivated. I need to get things going. And maybe that's what I'll do. Normally during the holidays, I do kind of revamp a little bit in here, but I don't think we need to in this particular case. I think we're in pretty good shape. I really like the audio we added last year at this time. So our new mixer that we have has now been running for a year, and I love it. It's so good. The industry is finally caught up to technology, I think, the audio industry. It took a long time for them to figure out, how do we do this? Do we make just a USB interface and a mixer, or do we make the whole mixer digital? And they finally made the whole mixer digital. It worked out fine. It's kind of weird, though, to have an audio mixer that you need a firmware upgrade on. I don't know if that's good or bad. So far, it's been good, because everything that we're doing audio-wise really takes place in that box. We used to have it separated out into separate audio processors and a big chain of things that have to take place. This simplifies things quite a bit. Anyway, enough of the inside baseball. It's been a great year, and I'm glad we got that there. We got a new camera about the same time. We're in pretty good shape to make that happen. So we have about 5 minutes and something seconds until we get started here. So this is not the live stream quite yet. We're getting there. But I know I've got a lot to go through. Let me pause this video. I don't need to see more video on my screen. This is in the right place. Gosh, could it be? No, certainly something will come up later. That's the beauty of a live stream, a live event. You just never know what's going to happen, what's going to go on. Normally nothing happens. Nothing goes on. Normally we're fine. I don't like it when things happen. Make that happen. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. We got all new questions for you, so this should be fun. We'll see how you guys do with this. This is a pretty good setup. It's one that we put together about 2 years ago. We revised our current configuration because we used to have everything in a different room, I called it my data center. It's really a closet, but I had a big, full-size 19-inch rack in my closet. It was a large walk-in type closet. In the studio. So the studio is sort of self-contained. It's not the closet in my bedroom. It's like, it's a separate walk-in closet just for the studio. And we put everything in there. So I had all these lines that were going over the ceiling and into the data center because I was worried about noise. I was worried about sound, which was at the time a valid concern. Now this desk has always had 19-inch racks on the left and right. You can't really see them. They're dusty now. We're at that end of year clean out time. But there's these 19-inch racks on the left side and the right side. And those racks hold everything now. You know, everything is sort of shrunk down over the last 10 years so that you can have just a regular digital camera that you would take out to have photographs is now fantastic for streaming video. Fantastic sensors inside of it. You know, displays are now flat and can fit anywhere. The network configurations are higher speed. They're just making it way too easy for me at this point. So everything now fits on the desk or in the desk. So that's what makes it great, is now everything is right here. And if I want to move the desk over, we do this. If I want to move it somewhere else, we do this. Am I using OBS? I'm not. I'm using a standalone streaming device from Blackmagic Design. It is this screen that you see to my left. It's sort of cut off there on the corner. But this is the UI. It's the user interface of that device. The device itself it's in here. Can we even see it? No, it's a little bit down, a little bit further down. You can't see it, but it is a Blackmagic streaming device that is just a piece of hardware. I used to run OBS to do all of the streaming, but that's a separate piece of software. It's updated constantly. You also have to make sure that your video drivers are updated with it, and sometimes the video drivers will update on their own, and then that messes up the OBS configuration. I was spending way too much time reconfiguring OBS every time I just wanted to stream. With this, for the past year, I've not touched it. I power it on. I give it the stream information that I need to give it, the keys that are required for me to connect to YouTube, and I click go, and it does it. So it's one of those things where I love OBS. I love the availability and the freedom that it provides me. I like the cost of OBS because it's free, but sometimes you need something that is more integrated, more hands-off, more purpose-built. So this is really, when we refer to a purpose-built appliance, that's what that is. That's all it does is stream. So that's why. That'll be how we work with it. But I still have my OBS machine. It's not even in this room. It's in, I might even have it in the closet or even in the garage. I'm trying to figure out. So I bought this big rack-based big system, and now I have nowhere to put it. I might have enough room in these racks now. I have the audio that I've been using. I've been waiting to pull out the last audio piece of this because I keep thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back to the previous audio. Well, I've been running it a year now. What am I waiting for? That's sort of my problem. So that's another advantage to having this sort of 2-week time frame at the end of the year. We can kind of think about what we may want to pull out of this. Maybe I put that system back in here. It's a Windows system, which would be great for doing that. So that would be fine. Professor Messer, why do you have the same t-shirt? Well, I don't wear t-shirts online. I do wear t-shirts, just not when the camera is on. All of my shirts are collared. So I don't know. Why do I have the same t-shirt? What is that? I don't know. It's not the same t-shirt. So in fact, there's no t-shirt. That's an interesting question though. Now, if you're referring to my videos, my training videos, you'll notice all the training videos seem to have the same shirt in them. Well, that's because it's consistent all the way across. You don't see something different popping up every time. I usually shoot these in batches in a row, so over a month's time frame. I'll often tell people there's 120 videos in the course, and they'll say, wow, that shirt must be busy. All these videos, you have to wear the same shirt every time. And I say, no, I have bought 120 shirts. It's a different shirt every time, which is not true, but it's kind of funny. It's funny to think about anyway. We've got this ready, that's ready. We're in our last few seconds before we get started here. It's very funny because on the back end of this, behind the scenes, the discussions we have about shirts are remarkable. So it's great that you would mention it. And it's one of those things that, yep, somebody's noticed the shirts again. That's what happens. Okay, let's see if we can start up our keynote. I'm looking for a green light on my keynote. Do I get it? Come on, button. Push that. There it is. There's the green light. That's what we wanted. That looks good. This looks good. That looks good. It's top of the hour. It's about time to do a live stream. By the way, if you do have questions that you would like to submit for the second hour, you can do it right here. We will talk more about that link in just a moment. I think now it's time to get started on the live stream. So let's click that button. Let's click this button, and let's see what we can do. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2025 Professor Messer SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I bring you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see just how much you might know about some of these topics. We have all new questions for you today, almost all new. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And we'll talk about the other things that are happening in this industry in our second hour. If you have questions about IT, about technology, or really about anything you'd like to ask a question about, you can do that at any time using the link that we will reference many times in this first hour, professormesser.com/QA. There is a tab across the top, and you can flip between what is the current question I'm asking and what is the question that you would like to ask. It's all on that screen. In fact, if you would like to pop open a new browser window right now, and head over to that link. There's the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You can join us while we ask some of these questions that we have available on this system. In fact, you'll notice there will be a question if you go to that link, and it's a question that we call our rewind question because it's a question that we've done in a previous study group. This is the only time today that you will see a previous question in the link. We can make sure that we're able to access the QA. I can see that you're submitting questions into that link. That's where we focus our efforts. So the standing rule that we have for these questions is that I would like you to answer the question using that link on your screen. Do not put answers into the chat room, please. And please do not put any hints into the chat room. This question asks, a security administrator would like to publicly identify the organization's authorized email servers for their domain. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this information? Would it be DMARC, AUP, SPF, NDA, or SMTPS? This is just a bunch of letters on the screen. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these. We will talk about this question in just a bit. And again, if you would like to answer this question, simply go to the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer this particular question. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Thank you so much for being here. We do one of these study groups every month, and this is our last study group of the calendar year of 2025. So this has been an amazing year, and it's brought us to this point for our live streams. We're so glad to be here today, and we're so glad that you're able to join us. When we're not performing here in our live streams, I guess performing is not the right word. There's no dancing going on, but I guess there could be. When we're not here live, you can go to professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/X/Facebook/LinkedIn/Instagram. All of these things are here. You can certainly go there and find out what we are doing on your favorite social media platforms. And it's also a great place. We have a Discord available, professormesser.com/Discord, where we usually chat with people. We'll talk more about that in just a bit as well. If you are here, then you are probably focusing on getting your CompTIA Security Plus certification. This current version of the certification, the SY0-701, was released on November 7th of 2023. So if we do the math, usually CompTIA keeps these available about 3.5 years. So if you calculate that out, this version of the exam will continue to be available somewhere around May of 2027. That's our estimated time frame, and that's probably pretty close. As we get closer to May of 2027, we will be adjusting that date, but that's a 1.5 years away. You've got so much time before you ever hit that point that right now you are focusing on the right exam version. If you're watching this video and you're seeing that we're getting close to May of 2027, you may want to check in with our latest live stream and get an update on what those dates might be, or check the CompTIA website and make sure those are there. The CompTIA Security Plus exam is a single exam that you need to complete. You need to pass. They give you 90 minutes, and what they might give you a maximum of 90 questions. It might be fewer than 90 questions. You can go there, and that is where they will grade you on a scale from 100 to 900, and hopefully you will be able to score a 750. That is the passing score for the Security Plus exam. The exam itself consists of different kinds of questions, both multiple choice and a type of question called performance-based questions. If you've never heard of those, we'll talk about those coming up very, very shortly. So stick around if you want to learn more about performance-based questions. On our website, we have all of our videos available for free. Our entire training course is available for you to watch without any type of registration, any type of behind the scenes things that you need to do. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. You simply need to go to professormesser.com and you'll have access to all of our training courses immediately. You can watch whatever you would like. Of course, we have other training materials you might want to consider. We have practice exams, we have course notes, there are downloadable versions of these videos and more. You can find out more about all of those at professormesser.com/701SB for our 701 Success Bundle. Might be a good thing to check out if you're planning to pass your Security Plus exam. This live stream is captured in real time and saved to YouTube. When I stop this stream, it will immediately be available for replay. Sometimes you may be in a place where you're in the car, you might be working out, you'd like an audio-only version of the replay. I distribute those in a podcast format, so you can simply open your favorite podcast listening program, and now you're able to go through and listen to all of our previous study groups. You can find out more, and you can even click on the correct links to subscribe to those and go to professormesser.com/podcast. We also have quite a bit that we make available in streaming services, so you may not even have to download anything. If you're on Spotify, for example, just search for Professor Messer, and you can listen to us on Spotify without needing to download anything. I guess sometimes you might need to download the Spotify app, or you might need to download the browser that runs the Spotify web. You know what I mean. There's not much more that you would need to download other than Spotify itself. We also... Well, if you look at my YouTube video description about a day after we're done, you'll notice that it has timestamps that go directly to the questions and answers that we're asking. Those do not appear automatically. They are not put in through AI. The way you know that is they're correct. They're accurate. And they're accurate because we have humans that do that. Specifically, one of my favorite humans, which is Lori, my marketing manager. She is going through and watching this on a replay and putting in all of those timestamps into the list so that you have the most accurate way to go back and listen or watch the information that you need to pass your Security Plus exam. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. If those of you in the chat room, if you like those timestamps, give Lori a heart there. She's watching the replays as it's going by, the chat replay, probably at 2x speed. And it's something that has been very, very helpful through the years. Hopefully that's something that can help you with your studies as well. I mentioned earlier that we have a Discord server where thousands of people are registered and participating. If you're studying for your A+, your Network Plus, your Security Plus exam, or any other certification, we have channels on our Discord that are for you. You can even create an ad hoc study room that other people can join. So even if you don't know anyone on the platform, one of the best ways to meet people, start up one of those study streams and start studying with people who are interested in their Security Plus exam. People will join you automatically, and you have complete control over that room, and then you can close the room out when you're done. It's a great way to have some collaboration and get people involved very easily without really having to coordinate very much. You can find out more at professormesser.com/Discord. At some point, you will need to take your Security Plus exam, and you could go over to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your voucher, but why would you do that when I have the same vouchers available and they're already discounted? You can find out more on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only if you are in the US or Canada, that link will be available to you, and not only do you have access to discounted vouchers there, you also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a book that I wrote specifically to give you tips and tricks for studying and to give you some strategies that I have used during the exam itself that I think could give you a few extra points on your exam. This is something that we include free. If you buy a voucher, you get my Exam Hacks ebook free. We don't sell this ebook. The only way you can get that is to either purchase a voucher or purchase a success bundle from our site, so it's relatively exclusive. You can find out more at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go over that question I asked you earlier, which is a security administrator would like to publicly identify the organization's authorized email servers for their domain. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this information? Would it be DMARC, AUP, SPF, NDA, or SMTPS? Let's close our poll and see how you did with this one. We didn't quite get a majority on this one, but I think we did pretty well than the last time we did it. We've got quite a bit here. So you can see that 47% of you answered SPF. We have 23% of you that said SMTPS and 24% of you that said DMARC. So those are effectively a tie. And then you have a tie At the last place, AUP got 3% and NDA got 2%. Very low numbers. Not many of you thought that was the correct answer. This is something that many organizations do to make sure that when you receive an email, you know that it really did come from an authorized email server. This is a text record that is put into the DNS of the place that owns that particular email system, or at least is responsible for sending emails from that domain, is a better way to put it. That is something that we call the Sender Policy Framework, or SPF, where you would add those text-based information into your DNS. And that way, when I receive an email from you, I can query your DNS, see what the authorized servers were, compare that to the server I received it from, and if it didn't come from an authorized server, that makes it pretty suspicious. So this is a great way to at least have one type of check to see, is this spam or is this not spam? Now, this might not be spam. It may just be a company that didn't properly configure their SPF record. Or it might be someone trying to pretend to be that company sending you information. This is only one way to validate the email. There are other methods. I talk about all of those in my video under the SY0-701 course, section 4.5. And the name of the video is Email Security. You can read up more on SPF and the other methods for protecting yourself against these types of email threats. You can simply add it as text in your DNS. My DNS has a nice web-based front end. So I just say I would like to add a text record for everything here, and here is the text record I might want to add into my list to validate that particular email server. That was the answer we were looking for, and 47% of you got that one absolutely correct. DMARC is a way that you could tell someone if you receive something that doesn't look like it really came from us, what would you like to do with it? We tell people we would like you to archive it or put it in some type of area where it can do no harm. Do not deliver it to the end user. Maybe just delete it. We don't want you to do anything with it. Or you can do whatever you'd like. You can send it on to the user and mark it as spam. It's completely up to you. Different organizations have different policies, and we can, of course, integrate that policy into our mix so that if people do receive a message that does appear to be spam, we could say, just delete it. It's not from us. You can delete it. And that gives someone a little bit more information on how to manage emails from something that may not have come from the original source. 23% of you said the answer was SMTPS. That's a Simple Mail Transfer Protocol Secure, which is certainly a very common way to transfer information from one mail server to another, but it has nothing to do with publicly identifying the organization's authorized email servers. SMTPS can be used by any email server in the world, and nothing about that designates that it came from us or specifically from anyone else. 3% of you said an AUP. If you're somebody who's starting a job and you're wondering, what type of user policies do I have for using this technology? It's your AUP that provides that information. That's more of a policy answer, not anything that is publicly identifying your email server. An NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, that obviously has nothing to do with any type of email communication, so that would not apply. In this case, the answer that best provides this information turns out to be the only one that really does provide this information, which is the Sender Policy Framework, SPF. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can help protect yourself in the world of email as someone who might be an email administrator. This is a multiple choice question. So most of the questions you get on your exam, the vast majority of questions you get on your exam will be multiple choice questions where there is a question at the top and there are multiple answers to choose from. But there are also on your exam questions that are not multiple choice questions. You usually get a handful of these right at the beginning of the exam. So somewhere around 3 to 5 plus or minus, somewhere in there, you'll get a number of questions right at the beginning that are not multiple choice. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions, and performance-based questions are simply anything that is not multiple choice. That kind of is a very broad range, isn't it? That's fill in the blank. That's performing a function at a command line, if that applies. We don't really have command lines in Security Plus, so that one doesn't necessarily apply for this exam. Maybe it's something like a drag and drop question. Maybe you have to choose from pull-down menus, or maybe you have to simply answer or put things in a particular order. So matching questions are also common for performance-based questions. So anything, any style of question you can think of, that's performance-based questions. The benefit, however, of these is that the way they ask the question really isn't very important. What's important is that you know the answer, of course. And fortunately, the performance-based questions work exactly the same way as the multiple choice-based questions because they will ask you information that comes directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. So a lot of people get very worried about performance-based questions. Don't worry about it. If you know the content, you will easily be able to answer these questions. Let's go to by the way, every month we have a brand new performance-based question. This is our performance-based question of the month, and it asks you to complete the chart. Complete this chart that we have on the screen. I have listed on this chart A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And on the right side, I have a series of controls. And I want you to match the controls to each of these. You can see that I have two control type examples, two control type columns. One that is preventive control types, and the other is corrective control types. And then I have different categories for those. I have a technical category, a managerial category, an operational category, and a physical category. So we have 8 different places to drag and drop those in. And look at that. I have 8 different items, 8 different security controls on the right side. I need you to put the right security control in the right place. So each security control will be used once. We have 8 slots to put it into. We have 8 security controls that matches up 1-to-1. I want you to fill in that particular chart. This might be a good one to study. If you're someone who's already worked on your security controls, you've gone through these before, you might be familiar with what some of these might be. I'm not sure how did I not set this up as a text-based poll? I probably didn't, because I see a lot of people putting in single items into the poll. So unfortunately, maybe doing this online will be a little cumbersome, but remember in your mind what you would put in for A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, H. See if you can figure out what those are. I don't think I can modify the type of question once it is published. Can I? Can I edit it? I did a word cloud. I can do multi-choice. So let's do that. Will it take? Nope. I can cancel the poll. Let's do that. We'll cancel the poll. We'll save this. Can I redo it? This is all real time. We're going to see if this works. I don't know if this, it's not multi-choice. It's simply text. So let's save that and let's bring it up again. Isn't this fun? There you go. So now you've got a poll back up again and you can kind of see if you want to put those in. Now you should just be able to put the whole text in. We will do it live. There's a nice callback. Well done, sir. Well played. We've got that ready to go. It's already getting warm in the studio. You turn the lights on and everything starts getting a little bit warmer. And I didn't turn on the AC because it was cold outside. But as you'll notice, we're not outside. Have a look at those. See what you think the answer is. Let's go through these answers a little bit at a time. See if we can put into the mix what we think the right answers are. This might be good to also figure out if you're someone who is working on your security controls. This is just 2 of the control types that you need to know. There are other control types listed on the exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with those so that when you come down to taking these types of questions during the exam, you are familiar with all of them. So let's start at the very top of this list. Let's go to the control types. First, let's talk about what is a preventive control type. We have these 2 different control types on this list, but what is a preventive type of control? That means we are blocking access to a resource. We're preventing someone from moving from point A to point B. So you can think about maybe more physical type things like a guard is a preventive control, but a firewall is also a preventive control because that prevents information from going from point A to point B. That's a little different than a corrective control type. Corrective means you're needing to correct something. That's usually done after the fact. So something occurred, now we have to correct that thing that has occurred. So something like you were performed a backup, then a machine was corrupted, it got infected with malware, the hard drive failed. How do we correct that? Well, we perform a restore because we have a backup. A restore there, a backup and restore would be a corrective control. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight on how you can put these things together. Let's complete our chart. We'll go to our list and we'll start with our technical control. A technical control that is preventive. We just talked about both preventive controls and corrective. A preventive control will prevent traffic from going from point A to point B, or prevent a person from going to point A to point B. A technical version of that would be something like a firewall. We just talked about that, where a firewall is allowing or blocking information based on a series of policies or access control lists that you have added into the firewall itself. A corrective control type that is in the technical category. What type of technical thing in this list could we use to have a control of corrective? A backup. That's another example that we just gave. So we're able to correct this using a technology. The system failed, the hard drive failed, we need to restore the system, we'll restore from backup. That was our corrective control. Let's do the next list. On the next category is a managerial control. Managerial controls are those that are usually mandated by, well, management, by your bosses, by the people running the network. A preventive management control may be an onboarding policy. So when you start with a company, you're presented with a series of policies that you must follow. Those policies you sign and say, yes, I will follow those policies. That an onboarding policy is a very good example of that type of control type that is preventive. We also have a corrective control type, policies for reporting issues. So if somebody does find a problem, what should they do? If you notice that there is a system that is not protected properly, maybe somebody turned on a system that's not connected to the domain. Maybe you found within a system that a security control has not been enabled. Well, then we can set up a policy ongoing so that if you find a system that is effectively not configured properly, we can correct that. And we could put policies in place where you can simply send a help desk ticket in. You have to notify your manager. There may be a number of policies that are required depending on the type of data that your organization has to deal with. There are others that we can work through. Let's go through this next list. Operational category. Operational categories are those like a guard shack. That would be something preventing you operationally from moving from place to place. And then we have contacting authorities would be something corrective. So if you notice something unusual going on within the operations of your organization and you're thinking there might be someone trying to get over the fence, well, we can certainly contact the authorities and have them correct that particular problem. Make that happen. So anytime we have people involved in the process, that is generally operational. And the last one on our list is physical, a physical category. This one might be a little easier because we're certainly connected to the physical world. And we can see that something like a door lock would prevent people from gaining access to the network. We also have, from a corrective perspective, a fire extinguisher. That is one that we would use to correct a problem. That would be a pretty bad problem to correct. So if there's smoke and fire, it's pretty good to have a corrective control sitting around like a fire extinguisher that we can use to put out that particular issue. Now, these controls that we went through are just a portion of the ones that we need to be able to understand for our exam. We went through specifically the preventive control and the corrective control. And then we have in this list a much larger list containing all of them in our video. This is a video in section 1.1 called security controls. And one of the things that you will notice about these security controls is they are not exclusive to any particular type of category or control type. So you might be able to have a particular security control appear in multiple places on this table. So don't try to think that a security control can only be used one way. Security controls can be used often many different kinds of ways, and so they might fit into many different boxes into this list. This is just an example of the different boxes that you can add into this list. So something to consider when you're going through your mix. So for those of you that we're going to back up here real quick. Those of you that answered this question, a technical control in the preventive category is firewall, corrective is backup recovery. Under the managerial category, a preventive control would be an onboarding policy, and a corrective control would be policies for reporting issues. An operational category would be a guard shack on the preventive side, and if you want to correct a problem, you'll want to contact the authorities. And for a physical category, a preventive control can be a door lock or a fire extinguisher. Now, obviously, there are other control types that you can fit, other security controls that you can fit into these control type categories. This is just one of what is probably many examples that you can put into this mix. Make sure you are familiar with all of them as you start working through, and here are all of them that all of the different control type examples and categories that we have from the official CompTIA exam objectives. Hopefully you did very well on that drag and drop matching style performance-based question. Maybe that's something that can help you as well. Let's keep going through our mix. We have, let's shift gears back to a multiple choice question, shall we? This next question is one that asks, a company has been informed of new laws associated with customer privacy and protection. Which part of the organization would be responsible for ensuring this compliance? Would it be the incident response team, the onboarding team, the data custodian, the change control board, or the chief security officer? If you think you know the answer, please use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that is on your screen and answer this one. Maybe you know this one. A lot of people are answering very quickly. So I think the idea of knowing who handles data, especially as it's associated with privacy, has been a relatively new feature on the 701. I would bet future exams would even expand on this. Privacy is becoming such an important consideration. So many new laws. It's been addressed around the world. So this is not a topic that's going away. This is a real topic that every organization has to deal with to some degree, and the rules are changing all the time. Rules specifically around compliance. Usually these are laws that are being placed that deal with requirements companies have to maintain privacy for their customers. So a lot of you are locking in your questions. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a company has been informed of new laws associated with customer privacy and protection. Which part of the organization would be responsible for ensuring this compliance? Would it be the incident response team, the onboarding team, a data custodian, the change control board, or a chief security officer? Let's see how you did with this one. We'll close our poll and see how you answered. Again, we had a little bit of a mix on this one. The person responsible for ensuring the compliance, 47% of you said that would be the chief security officer. 38% said it would be the data custodian. 10% said the change control board, and then single digits, 3% for the onboarding team and 2% for the incident response team. Well, the different roles you have for data can be summarized in a lot of different ways. But if we were to look at the official CompTIA exam objectives, we know that one of those is someone called the data custodian. You might also see this person referred to as the data steward. This is the person that is responsible for really the hard work that goes into maintaining this data. They're the ones with the boots on the ground. They're the ones typing at the keyboard to make sure that we have accurate data, that data is private, and that data is secure. That is their job. So they're working every day with that data in your organization. Some companies have a little bit of data. Some companies have a lot of data, but every company has data of some kind. So having this type of direct view into the data and control over who has access to the data is an important part of this. So they might add sensitivity labels to the data or categorize it in a way that only certain people may be able to access. They would be able to ensure compliance with any applicable laws and standards, which I mentioned are changing all the time, and they will be managing the access rights themselves to the data. So you could say that people in shipping and receiving can see that data, but people in accounting cannot. And you can decide whether that is the right type of access that someone should need. They might also be implementing the security controls themselves. So they might be the ones adding these groups and adding the access for these groups. That is our data custodian or data steward. So that means that the folks that answered data custodian, 38% of you got that one absolutely correct. We did have a large number, 47% say that it was the chief security officer. And you can see that in here, we're asking what part of the organization will be responsible for ensuring this compliance. Touching the data and modifying the information is an important part of this. What would usually happen is the chief security officer would say, there are new laws regarding privacy. Here, data custodian, please implement those new laws. And the data custodian will be responsible for ensuring that they would be then compliant. The data custodian 38% was the answer we were looking for. It would not be change control board. Change control board would only be involved if we were making a change to an existing system. This might be an upgrade to software or firmware. Maybe we need to install a new application. Maybe we need to disable an application. The change control board will be responsible for that, but they're not responsible for ensuring compliance of the data. That has nothing to do with the change control board. An onboarding team would be responsible for making sure that you knew the policy of the organization, doing everything that's necessary when someone starts with the organization. That has nothing to do with keeping data private as part of an overall requirement for the company. And incident response team, 2%. Well, this is not an incident. We didn't have a problem, so we would not involve the incident response team. In this case, the organization has somebody called the data custodian that is responsible for ensuring the compliance of all of that information. And if you answered 38%, data custodian, got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another one. We've got one on here, and we might be able to bounce back a little because I think a lot of people, especially this time of year, are very familiar with this technology. Which of the following security technologies is most associated with using Apple Pay or Google Pay? Would that be tokenization, trusted platform module, certificate signing request, SD-WAN, or key management system? All of these are technologies we need to know from the official CompTIA exam objectives, but only one really fits this particular requirement. Again, the question asks, which of the following security technologies is most associated with using Apple Pay or Google Pay? Is that tokenization, trusted platform module, certificate signing request, SD-WAN, or key management system? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. A lot of you plugged in your answer fast. I mentioned maybe we all know this one. Maybe we have a large number of folks that know what this one happens to be. We can step through and understand what these are. If you've used Apple Pay or Google Pay, you may not even realize the technologies that are occurring behind the scenes to keep all of your private financial information private on a continued basis. This is the challenge when you're trying to send credit card numbers over the network. You don't want somebody getting their hands on that credit card information. How do you protect it when you're using Apple Pay or Google Pay? Let's find out. The question asks, which of the following security technologies is most associated with using Apple Pay or Google Pay? Is it tokenization, trusted platform module, certificate signing request, SD-WAN, or key management system? What'd you choose? Let's find out. We'll close the poll. 72% of you say the answer is tokenization. That's a pretty strong number. We also had double digits. 17% of you say it's trusted platform module. 6% say key management system. 5% say certificate signing request. And then 1% say an SD-WAN. Well, let's see what I think the answer is. It's the one that 72% of you chose. We did get a majority on that one, which is tokenization. What in the world are you talking about tokenization? I don't know what you mean when you're referring to tokenization. Well, it's a process that can occur in many different environments, but let's just take the example of Apple Pay or Google Pay. Broadly speaking, tokenization means that we're taking some data that is probably sensitive data and we're replacing it with something completely different. We refer to that replacement as a token. It's a placeholder for something that is private, something we don't want other people to know about. This is very common in the credit card world because you might provide a token during checkout. You probably might even have a credit card that you're using that gives you the option of creating one-time use numbers. You may have even seen that feature available on your particular credit card. So you can go to the website, get a one-time use number, use that one-time use number to purchase something on your online retailer. You go to professormesser.com and use your one-time only credit card number. Once that number is used, it's done. It can never be used by anyone else. So if somebody does get their hands on that one-time use number, you've already used it. They can't use that number to somehow get access to purchase things using your account information. This happens all the time when you're using Apple Pay or Google Pay because you use your phone And what has happened once you register, you initially registered your card on that phone. So all of your cards you had to put on here initially. Can't pay for something unless you register your card. That registration process registers with a remote token service server that sends back a bunch of tokens that can be used on your laptop or your phone or your watch, depending on how you pay for these types of things. So I have it on my watch now. I can walk up to the register. I can use it at the register, and it will check that number that is a token. It's not my actual credit card number, and send that for validation instead of sending in my real credit card number. That is effectively also a one-use number. So once you have a transaction with that credit card number, it's that token, not even a real credit card number, the token that represents my credit card, that is now something that is used, and nobody else can take advantage of using that number, even if they happen to catch it somewhere in the middle of this conversation. That is our world of tokenization. That's why we use that process. In fact, you'll notice that if you are using your phone or your watch to pay for something at a credit card, that's actually safer than using your actual credit card number. So tokenization has some very specific advantages. It's remarkable. I will get into conversations occasionally when checking out. They'll say, oh, do you want to use credit card? Do you want to use a tap? I'll use the tap. It's much safer. I go, what do you mean it's much safer? Well, let me tell you about tokenization. They're so sorry they asked. I don't go into the level of detail that we did here, but I say doesn't actually send your credit card number, so it's much safer. That's pretty much all you need to know, and that's all you needed to know when you answered this question. Said tokenization was 72% of you is the one that we chose for this particular answer, and you're absolutely correct. 17% said a trusted platform module. A TPM, as we often refer to it, is a piece of technology usually on our system boards, our motherboards, that have a cryptographic function associated with them. But a trusted platform module is not required when using Apple Pay or Google Pay. It's not part of that process, at least not directly. And of course, my phone doesn't have what technically is a trusted platform module. It has something that is very similar, but is not a trusted platform module. We have a number of you that 6% of you that answered a key management system. Key management systems are used to provide you with a key or a password over time. This is usually done on the back end. We don't have a key management process to be able to pay for things that are registered. Thankfully, we don't even have to think about keys. We just use our phone, and it makes a beeping noise, and everything is fine with the world. So we don't need a key management system to be able to use Apple Pay or Google Pay. We'd never use them if that was the case. We have a certificate signing request. That's something you usually do when you're requesting a signed certificate from a certificate provider. This is usually a third party. You give them the request, and then they send you back the signed certificate. Fortunately, we don't have to do that to use Apple Pay or Google Pay. That's something really focusing on certificates for web servers, for devices, and other applications and other uses as well. And then 1% said an SD-WAN. SD-WAN's commonly associated with web-based communication, can really be used for anything. And it's usually used for cloud-based applications to make that cloud-based process much more seamless and be able to send traffic to the right place instead of having everything in one centralized data center. A lot of other very nice features available in SD-WAN. It's a very common way to connect to WAN today, something we can use all the time. That is our answer for this one. Tokenization, 72% of you got that one absolutely correct. That was the answer that we were looking for. One of the things you'll notice as we are looking at the topics that we have covered already is there is a lot of them. Tons of topics that we need to know. This exam has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics associated with the Security Plus exam. They are all listed one by one in the official exam objectives. But once you watch the videos, you might want to reference some of that information again. But we have 121 videos, over 15 hours of information in our Security Plus course. So where do you get a consolidated view of all of that data? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's my Security Plus course notes, a 96-page set of course notes that includes everything from the tokenization features, our security controls, our cloud computing requirements, risk management, security techniques, and so much more. Everything that we have in our videos is in this book. This is the PDF version of the book. Obviously, a big table of contents there going step by step through every single video. And then I start with the very first video in our course, section 1.1 for security controls. And look, there's our security controls right in the course notes, along with the other things that we would have, important charts, important tables, important graphics, everything that we've created for key exchange and digital signatures and zero trust, change management, and so much more is all in our Security Plus course notes. Not only do we have the course notes in that digital form, we also have them in a physical form. These are identical to the physical and digital editions are identical to each other. Same information you just saw on the screen, printed in color. So that's something that's kind of nice. You can really see the differences between all of those. Perfect bound, as they like to say, which is what we do with these softbound books, and printed in full color. If you purchase the physical edition, we print these in an on-demand process and ship it to you. And if you are waiting to receive the shipment, the moment you purchase the physical edition, we give you access to the digital edition for free. So you can go through and download and start reading through the digital edition while you're waiting for that to arrive in the mail. If you'd like to know more about this, you can find out at professormesser.com/701cn for our 701 course notes, or simply use the links in the menus at the top of the Professor Messer website. They're located under the hamburger menu if you are coming in on the mobile side. Let's see what other questions you might have for us. Let's keep going through this list. This next one, more of a cryptographic question. It's a question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to recover a password saved as a cryptographic hash? Would that be to create a digital signature from the hash, retrieve the original password from directory services, use the hash as the password, obtain the password history from the MDM, or try every possible combination of password characters? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. The question again asks, which of the following would be the best way to recover a password saved as a cryptographic hash? Would you create a digital signature from the hash? Would you retrieve the original password from directory services? Would you use the hash as the password? Would you obtain a password history from the MDM? Or would you try every possible combination of password characters? Do you think you know the answer? Go to the link right there at the bottom of your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Oh, already a hashing question. We're getting into the cryptography part of the Security Plus exam. There are a lot of good cryptography questions on the exam. I like that the exam these days focuses more on how you use cryptography rather than very, very specific cryptographic functions or algorithms, which ultimately, in the world of IT security, we know what the algorithms are. We know which ones we should be using, but we very often run into scenarios where the algorithm itself is not as important as how we use the algorithm. Most of the problems we have with cryptography in the enterprise are not with the algorithms or the way that you would store information securely. It's usually the implementation of the technology that always trips us up. Somebody didn't implement it properly, and therefore we now have a security vulnerability because of that. Let's talk about this one. This might be a good choice where somebody has said, we need to recover a password, but all we have is a cryptographic hash. What do we do? So it's important to understand what a cryptographic hash is. It's important to understand when we would use it. So let's look at an example of a cryptographic hash. I took some passwords and I created a hash from these passwords, specifically a SHA-256 hash. So I took the password of, this is not a password you would use, certainly, but let's say take a password of 123456. When we store that password, we don't want people to find our password files and be able to see those in plain text. You would never, never, never store a password in plain text. Instead, you store it as something that you can't reverse out of. You can't somehow reverse it and get the password from it. So we use something called hashing to be able to do that. I use the SHA-256 algorithm to take the password 123456, but instead of storing the password of 123456, I store the password as this long hash that's right here. Like that looks nothing like 123456. That's right. And in fact, there's no way to undo that. We aren't encrypting this. We're effectively creating a fingerprint of this. We're creating this hash is what we call it. In fact, we'll take another scenario. Let's take a similar password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All we did was add the 7 on the end. Look how different the hash is. It is nothing like the 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's part of the design of the algorithm, so that even a minor change to the original text turns out to be something very different in the resulting hash. That is all by design. Same thing for the misspelled QWERTY that's right here. Somebody trying to be sneaky when they're trying to work through their QWERTY stuff. This is what? It needs to have a U. No, this is how they just went across the keyboard and typed that. They weren't actually trying to create a word from that. I do get emails about this. And of course, use the password of password. Still not a good idea. Not something you should do. In fact, these hashes might be different depending on the operating system that you might run into. For example, if you're on Linux, for example, here are some usernames. This is a password file in Linux. This is not something you would normally have access to. You need the elevated rights in the Linux operating system as the super user to gain access to this file. But what if a hacker gets into your system and they grab this file? This has a username like Jumper Bay or Carter or Jackson or O'Neill. And then it has maybe an ID for that user. And then it has the hash for that user right there. But again, you can't really figure out what the password is based on the hash. This one is relatively easy to figure out. I'll give you an idea. This is a little Easter egg I stuck into the course itself. Some of those passwords have a little bit of meaning for the person who is using that password. But I'll leave that up to you to figure out the details of that. So that's what we're faced with. How do you recover if all you have is that information? Let's look at our possible answers and see what you chose in this case. Which of the following would be the best way to recover a password saved as a cryptographic hash? 33% of you say you would retrieve the original password from directory services. 29% say you would create a digital signature from the hash. 13% say you would use the hash as the password. 12% say you would obtain the password history from the MDM. And 12% say you would try every possible combination of password characters. This is one of those examples where we all went one direction, but the actual answer was one of the fewest responses that we got. The answer in this case, when all you have is the hash, the only way to recover that hash is to somehow try every possible combination to try to recreate the hash. We refer to this as a brute force method of determining the password. So you have to start with A. Does that match the hash? It doesn't. Okay, let's try another one. B. Let's try that one. Does that pass the password? No, it does not. So even if you didn't know that, what about these other methods? Why can't you use these other methods to recover a password? Well, let's talk about them. For example, 33% of you said you would retrieve the original password from directory services. We're not storing our passwords in directory services. We never store passwords in plain text. So you could go back to directory services. You could look at someone's account in directory services, and you know what you would find? You'd find the hash. That's what is stored in directory services. The actual password is never stored anywhere, so you can't go back to directory services to get the original password. That is not going to work for you. How can we recover a password? 29% said we would create a digital signature from the hash. I guess that could be used if you want to be sure that you're sending the hash to someone else and you want to be sure that that hash is not changed along the way. That's really what a digital signature does, is being able to find that and make sure that we can confirm that nothing had been changed with the original plain text. In this case, the plain text was a hash. Sort of an odd way to describe a hash, isn't it? Creating a digital signature from that doesn't somehow magically create the password. That would break all of our passwords if it did that. Thankfully, that's not what a digital signature does, and you would have no way to derive the password by simply creating a digital signature from that. 13% said you would use the hash as the password. Problem solved. Again, if we could use a hash as a password, we would have broken all of our password functions. Not that the password's a great way to prevent someone access to your system, but it is a way. And we are not able to simply use the hash. That's not how you use hashes for that. And lastly, obtaining a password history from the MDM. Same issue here. The original password is not saved anywhere. So you can't go to directory services. You can't go to the MDM. You can't make that happen. Instead, the only possible way to recover a password from a cryptographic hash is to perform a brute force attack. And that is exactly what I describe here. Trying every possible combination of password characters is a brute force type of attack. That is the answer. 12% of you got that one right. This is some people in the chat room going, that's a trick question. Well, it'd be a trick question if there was something tricky about it, but it is not. I think most of the time a trick question is one, hey, I didn't know that, therefore it's a trick question. Nope, doesn't work that way. It's a legitimate question. You could see a question like that on the exam very easily. So as I mentioned earlier, CompTIA tends to want you to understand how technologies are implemented. And on the exam, it's very unusual for them to ask a direct question about something. There's, for example, they're not going to ask you, what's a brute force attack? Is it this, 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 this? Instead, they would give you a scenario. You need to recover a password saved as a cryptographic hash. How would you do that? And they would give you options like this. So this is a very good example of recovering that password saved as a cryptographic hash. Hopefully that can give you an idea of how to think about the way passwords are being used. And if you're not familiar with this process, please, 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 please go back to our video on password attacks in section 2.4 and have a look at our video on password attacks. We go into much more detail about hashing and how people use these hashes and how attackers will use different methods to perhaps minimize the brute force process. It's all in that video. It's very intriguing and it's an important fundamental that you definitely need to know for the exam. If you answered try every possible combination of password characters, 12%, you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is to follow these directions, which is part of earning the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website. There's a link at the top and bottom of my site that says Contact Us. You can, of course, use that Contact Us to contact me anyway. But for this particular case, you're going to click on that link, put in your name, your email address, and in the subject line, please put December 2025 Security Plus. That way I know what study group this came from. And then in the body of the message on the line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, cryptographic hash combination. I'm trying to get a number of words in here. Cryptographic hash combination is the super secret code words of the month. You put those into the body of the message, you click send, it comes to me and I'll take it from there. Once it's received on my side, I know exactly what to do. Do not worry. It takes me about a week to turn these around, sometimes faster. I think I got the ones from Tuesday already out. So if you sent one of those in 2 days ago, you already got your email. Maybe I'll be just as quick with this one, or maybe not. I'm not sure yet, but I try to turn these in less than a week, get those back to you. Again, the way that you would receive that email is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put December 2025 Security Plus or something close to that. And then in the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, cryptographic hash combination. I think I got that right the second time. I think it was right the whole time. So we're good with that. So that is the way that you can send me, and then you can wait for that email to arrive. You'll receive a digitally signed email from me that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. But we're not done yet. Let's do more questions, shall we? Let's keep this going. Next on our list is this question that asks, which of the following would be the best example of COOP, whatever that is? Which of the following, this is a more directed question, but I thought I would put it in here since it does have an abbreviation in it. We sort of have to unpack it and then answer these. Which of the following would be the best example of COOP? Would that be backup stored in multiple locations? Would it be using multiple physical data center locations? Would it be writing a manual receipt during checkout? Would it be balancing the load across multiple servers? Or would it be installing a device certificate on a laptop? None of these seem to have been what I thought it was until I went through the whole list. So hopefully you ran into the same scenario. I'm like, is it that one? Is it that one? Is it that one? We're looking for the best example. Which of the following would be the best example of COOP? Is it backups stored in multiple locations, using multiple physical data center locations, writing a manual receipt during checkout, balancing the load across multiple servers, or installing a device certificate on a laptop. If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, go to professormaster.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. Maybe you're familiar with this, or maybe you have no idea what this particular thing happens to be. This is a abbreviation style of question, certainly, to be sure, but it's also important that you know what the different options are for protecting your systems. And these abbreviations pop up all the time in our industry. Make sure you're familiar with all of them. If you notice as you go through the exam objectives, they tend to write out the abbreviation right after the name of the objective. So that might be a good clue for you to be able to lock in on that particular topic and learn everything you can about not just the abbreviation and the name, but how you would apply that technology. This is a really good example of how that fits in this particular scenario. Make sure you are familiar with all of those. This is one you should really go through and understand the details, the intricacies of this. This might be something that you might want to become more familiar with if you're not already. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be the best example of COOP? Would it be backup stored in multiple locations, using multiple physical data center locations, writing a manual receipt during checkout, balancing the load across multiple servers, or installing a device certificate on a laptop? Which one did you choose? Let's find out. We'll close the poll, and we can see that we got another rainbow. 37% of us say the answer is backups stored in multiple locations. We have 25% that said using multiple physical data center locations. 18% said balancing the load across multiple servers. 10% said writing a manual receipt during checkout. And 9% said installing a device certificate on a laptop. First thing that we need to start with is, what in the world is a COOP? What is a COOP? This is continuity of operations planning. Kind of a big set of words there, but what it really means is that anything could happen that might bring down part of our systems. We could have a power outage. There could be, we're in the middle of winter here in the United States, so we might have a big snowstorm that comes through and takes down a bunch of connections to a remote site. Maybe you're working at a retail firm, you're in the store, it's the holiday season, and suddenly you lose connection to your credit card company. You can't take credit cards during one of your busiest seasons. Oh, what do we do? The technology is no longer there and available to us. It's not something we can rely on anymore to process orders. So what do? Well, we pull out the documents for our continuity of operations planning, and those say you can do this manually. Pick up your phone. The first step, you pick up the phone, you call the credit card company manually, you give them the information. In the meantime, we're trying to get that line up and running. That's one way that you can still continue the operations of the business, even though the technology may not be there to support you. We also have things like paper receipts we can use. Maybe the point of sale terminal isn't working. No problem. I'll just write you a receipt. Here's the receipt. I'll take your money. We're good. We can sync up the point of sale terminal once we get connectivity back to our systems. Those are different ways we take something that we would normally do, and we keep the business going, we keep the operations going, we keep the continuity of those operations going by using some other method that probably doesn't involve technology. This may be something that you can do on the fly, but very often this is something well documented. We've already thought of this problem occurring. We provided these policies and procedures to each individual store. If they run into this issue, they can simply pull the document, look at our plans, and determine what the best steps might be for resolving this particular issue. That is continuity of operations planning. So which one of these things would provide us with a way to keep the operations going if we already lost the technology? And which would be the best example of that? Having backup stored in, let's start with the number one, backup stored in multiple locations. You know, your backups aren't commonly used during normal operations, right? You can have 200 backups that are stored in 200 locations, but if you suddenly lose a point of sale terminal, having those multiple backups doesn't help you very much. Having multiple backups is always a good idea. It is a good philosophy. The 3-2-1 rule of backups you should already be using. And if you don't know what that is, you should absolutely have a look at the 3-2-1 rule. So you already have a backup that is off-site because you followed the 3-2-1 rule. One of your backups is located at that site. But if you lose the technology for operations, having the multiple backup doesn't help you at all. You're still down. That doesn't really assist you or help you with that connectivity, does it? Using multiple physical data center locations, again, we've lost the technology. We need some type of contingency when the technology isn't there. Having multiple physical data center locations doesn't help us very much when the connection to our store just died. We don't have any connectivity. Again, you could have 100 data centers. You don't have a way to communicate to those. The technology is no longer part of this scenario. That is the big part that we need to consider when there is continuity of operations, is that you don't have a computer. You may not have power. So what do? Having multiple data centers doesn't help us in that particular scenario, at least not as good as another question might be. Again, this is the best example of COOP that we're looking for. 18% said balancing the load across multiple servers. Well, that's always a good idea. You should always do load balancing. Same scenario there is that the technology is not a scenario where one of the servers of the load balancer failed. We've lost our technology. It does not exist. The phones aren't working. The credit card machine isn't working. We lost the power. Doesn't quite work in that particular scenario. We have 9% that said installing a device certificate on a laptop. That only confirms that the laptop is owned by the company or by the organization. Putting a device certificate on a laptop is always a good idea so you can identify that laptop remotely, but it doesn't help you if you lose technology. Oh, good, I've got a device certificate. How come I can't process orders? That has nothing to do with that particular scenario. The one that is the answer that we were looking for is the one that 10% of you chose, writing a manual receipt during the checkout process. Quite literally the example I use in the video where we have this is what, maybe it's not quite as obvious. This is a receipt pad. For those of you that have not experienced such a piece of manual technology, you need a pencil or a pen, and you write down the date, the person, you write down what they purchased and how much it cost, and at the bottom of that, you put the total, you take their money, you give them the receipt. It's very much like the receipt that is automatically printed from your print of sale terminal, but instead of relying on a print of sale terminal that's no longer working, you just write it out yourself. That is a good example of continuity of operations planning where you're able to work around bad technology in many cases by using no technology whatsoever. That is what the answer is in this case. We are writing a manual receipt during checkout as the best example in this list of COOP. I think that would be a good example for this. Now, if we were in the data center, this might be a different question, a different answer. But I think when we're dealing with this is you really do need to understand what is COOP, not just what are the letters. And this is a good example of this. I tell you this all the time with this exam. It's good to know what the letters are. And in fact, in this case, it might have given you some clue. You can see that, oh, that's continuity of operations planning. Okay, what's that? Now we have to take it to the next level. So if you're spending your time memorizing letters and what those letters mean, or I guess what those letters are referring to, the spelled out words, as they say in the CompTIA exam objectives, that's useful to a point, but I want you to take it to the next level. Now that you know the abbreviation and the acronym, now that you know the words associated with that acronym, now I want you to tell me how you would use that acronym, how you would use that particular technology. How is it implemented into your networking or security environment? How would you refer to this if you were in a particular scenario? Those are the types of questions you will get on the exam. Make sure you are familiar with those different abbreviations, but perhaps more importantly, make sure you are familiar with what those abbreviations mean. That may be more important there. One of the things that I have run into in this scenario, or really with this exam itself, is trying to make sure that I have created and built a set of study materials that really apply to the existing exam. This is much harder than you might think it is. Every time CompTIA updates their exam objectives, there might be a big change to the exam objectives themselves. For example, when we went from the 601 exam to the 701 exam, CompTIA effectively replaced half of the exam objectives in the exam. So half of the content was brand new. So you have to make sure that the materials you are using are up to date with the latest exam objectives. When I started looking at things like practice exams that are out there, there are a lot of practice exams you can choose from. One of the things I found, though, is a lot of the practice exams were not up to date with the latest exam objectives, or the people that wrote the practice exams didn't remove the things that were old and will not be asked on your exam. This is a bit of a problem. So I thought, well, I need to create my own practice exam. So I did. I wrote my own. And so I published these as a book. It is 381 pages. There are 3 separate 90-question practice exams in this book. It is thick with 2 C's. There's a lot happening in this book. I have a lot of information. I'm going to show it to you in just a moment. Inside this book are practice exams that include performance-based questions and multiple choice questions, so you can have a little bit more to work with there. There is always a good way to go through and figure out the deals, at least the information that's inside for each one of those sections. And as there's links on each one of these, let me show you what I mean. So I have my practice exams book right here. This is it. And I'm looking at question A12. This is on this is my practice exam A. This is on page 6, right at the beginning of the book. And it says, a security administrator is concerned about the potential for data exfiltration using external storage drives. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent this method of data exfiltration? Would it be to create an operating system security policy to block the use of removable media? Would it be monitor removable media usage in host-based firewall logs? Would it be to only allow applications that do not use removable media? Or would it be to define a removable media block rule in the UTM? So a lot of different ways to do this. There's a lot of ways that you can enable and disable access to removable media, but which one makes the most sense given this scenario? Well, if you just wanted to know whether it's a PDF. So great part about this is if you wanted to annotate this, if you had a stylus, you could write on the screen, or if you have a mouse, you can highlight things and maybe decide which one of these is the most important, make some notes here. Everything you store on this, of course, can be saved. But in this case, I want to know more than whether the answer is A, B, C, or D, which I could find out on page 33. I want to find out everything about this question, why the right answers are right, and perhaps more importantly, why the wrong answers would be wrong. All of this is on page 49. It says the details. We're on page 6. Well, one of the things that's frustrating to me when I use a PDF, when something's on the page, I have to either scroll. If I'm on my iPad, I'm sitting here scrolling with my finger. I'm using my mouse wheel to scroll down the PDF. It's just not a very efficient way to work. So in my practice exams book, I made hyperlinks in here so we can click the link that says the details, and it will immediately take me to page 49. Click. That's where I am. Page 49. It shows me the question again, and it tells me that the answer is A, create an operating system security policy to prevent the use of removable media, and I tell you why A is the right answer. That's sort of common for practice exams books, certainly. One of the things that always gets me is that I always get the answer wrong, and when I flip over to see the answer, they tell me why the right answer is right. Well, great, but I got it wrong. So why did I get it wrong? That's what I need to know. That's what would help me study. That's what would close the loop. That's what would actually teach me something. So in this book, every single incorrect answer is documented as to why it is incorrect. And of course, you can, look through every single one of these. I will tell you, even if you get the question right, please take a moment to read through the incorrect answers just to be sure that the reason you thought it was wrong really is the same reason that I thought it was wrong. You can find that in here. I tell you that monitoring removable media usage in host-based firewall logs would not be a correct answer, and here's why. Only allowing applications that do not use removable media. Is there such a thing? I don't think so, but that obviously is the wrong answer. And the defining a removable media block rule in the UTM, that doesn't help you prevent what's happening on a local machine. So that would be the incorrect answers, and that would be why they are incorrect. Now, if you're reading through this and you don't know what I'm talking about with exfiltration or external storage drives, there is a link also to the video that I used to create this question. So if you don't understand the terms or the technologies that I'm referring to in the question, you can give yourself an overview. In this case, Objective 2.2, Common Threat Vectors is the name of the video. I have a direct link in here if you have this as the PDF version. And of course, there's a QR code that goes to the same place. So if you just have the physical book with you, you can use the camera of your mobile device to go directly to the QR code. And if you get the practice exams and the course notes together, you get a bit of a discount. So those of you in the chat room are saying, hey, is there a coupon? Doesn't have to be. I just bundle them together and you get a discount built in when you start bundling them. Those are my practice exams. Maybe this can help you in the last part of your Security Plus studies. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/securitype or follow the main menu links on the professormesser.com website. I've been mentioning all this time that there is a practice exams book here that I used that is referencing every single term in the official exam objectives. Well, those official exam objectives are what you see on the screen here. You can find these at professormesser.com/objectives if you want to grab a copy for yourself. If you go to that link, just so you're aware, I'll bring it up here so you can see it. This is the Professor Messer website, the CompTIA exam objectives. I have links here for the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. There's the link. Takes you right to the Security Plus page. You just have to scroll down the page to the red box. I even have a picture of it on the screen. Let's do that right now. I'm going to click on CompTIA Security Plus Objectives. Oh, thank you, Google, for giving me an ad in the middle of a live stream. Appreciate that. And thank you, CompTIA, for the same thing. Security Plus. So I'm on the Security Plus page that it took me to. If you scroll down past the objectives summary, that's not what I'm talking about. We don't want to see the summary. We need the full objectives. Keep scrolling down, and here's the list. I've already put in my email address, so it shows me a bigger red box, but it would normally just have a box there that says, put in your email address, and you can put it in there. And here's the direct download to the English, Japanese, Portuguese, Spanish, Thai versions of the exam objectives. And if you download those, they look a lot like, where's my objectives? They're right here. That's what you would download. There's my set of objectives. And as I mentioned, they show you everything. For example, section 1.3, explain the importance of change management processes and the impact to security. Would that be the approval process, ownership, stakeholders, impact analysis, test results, backup plan, maintenance window, standard operating procedure? The technical implications would be allow list, and you get the idea. There's a lot here. And that's just one section. You'll also notice that the topics I'm covering here match the videos exactly. And that's because CompTIA tends to focus on giving you exactly these details in the exam. They very rarely, if at all, deviate from this list. This makes it the perfect study list. And since my videos are directly associated with this perfect study list, I would say they're the perfect videos for this. Of course I would. But I think if you look at the videos, you'll see there's a nice match there. You can follow it as you're going through the exam objectives. You can watch the videos side by side. And of course, the practice exam or the course notes that we have also follow the same format in the same order, which makes it very, very, very easy to find things. And did I mention the objectives are free? You don't have to pay for them. Just go to professormesser.com/objectives and you can download those objectives for no cost at all. Well, we do one of these study groups every month, which means we do them again next year. Not 12 months from now, but in January, next month. When we hit 2026, we already have the schedule up. You can see that we have A+ study groups on the 6th and the 8th of January. We have Network Plus on the 14th, and our next Security Plus study group we have currently scheduled for January the 21st. If you want to know when our next live event is going to be, because you might be watching this video after January of 2026, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when the next live event will be. Also, I will tell you, sometimes things change in my schedule. The chaos that is my life sometimes scrambles things up. So if that happens, come on over to professormesser.com/calendar and you can confirm when the next event will be. If I do change the date, I will be changing it right here on this link, professormesser.com/calendar. So you are in good shape. Regardless of what happens with my schedule, you'll know when the next live event is going to be. Find out more about this, go to the website. You can, of course, have a look at those objectives and so much more. Well, this brings us to the end of our first hour, but we're not done yet. This is simply the end of me asking you questions. Now it's the part where you ask me the question. You can do that by going to the same link we've been using this whole time, professormesser.com/QA, to submit those questions for our after show, which we are doing immediately after this. Just stay exactly where you are. Don't forget about the links on our site to find us at Discord. It would be professormesser.com/Discord. You can see our weekly Security Plus pop quiz questions on X at professormesser.com/X. You can also find those on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. And of course, our YouTube. What, you don't know about our YouTube channel? You should subscribe right now. You can head over to professormesser.com/YouTube. And this would also be a great time, if you like this video, to give it a nice thumbs up. That actually does help us quite a bit. Lets the algorithm know that you're interested in this content, and let other people know this might be something they might want to see as well. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers for those of you in Canada or the US, or our exam hacks ebook that's included with our professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our course notes, practice exams, and so much more is on our website at professormesser.com/701SB. That would be a good place to go. Stick around. We're coming back in just a few seconds with our after show. Thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay. I'll take a sip. I'll set up some cameras on this side, try to get things working properly, hit a few buttons here, and it works, everybody. Welcome to the after show. This is a very a super unscripted, a completely unscripted after show where I've not done any planning. That's the beauty of the after show, is there's no planning here at all that has to be done. Instead, you're going to give me information, and I'm going to try to react to that. I'm going to try to figure out the answers for all of these. The way that you would do that is you would head over to our link that we have. You can submit these questions for the second hour at any time using that link that you are now painfully familiar with. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to submit a question into this list. Your question will not appear on the screen immediately. It goes into a queue that's on the back end here. And then I sort through the queue to find the interesting questions, the things that you're wanting to know, and we present those. These could be questions about certifications, about technology, about the industry, or really about anything else. We've always had some interesting questions pop up along those lines, and I will be looking through these questions and answering them from that list. So that's where you need to go, professormesser.com/QA, to be able to submit those questions. Whoa, lots of questions already here. I just popped it up. Yeah, there's a few questions we need to go through. You guys are really good at bringing these through the list and seeing what we would be doing with these. Let me have a look at some of the things we have. There's so many good questions you have here. I wish I could do all of these questions. It would be super great to be able to break through and be able to just spend hours and hours here. Well, unfortunately, we don't have that much time, but we do have some time to be able to work through it. Let's have a look at the first question. I'm going to just take the first one on this list. That's how discerning I'm going to be in this mix. This question is from my good friend Anonymous. Anonymous asks, trying to do the labs as well. I see many people suggesting to try HackMe and some of these other websites. They're saying build your own home lab. What's the best thing to follow? What should I do here so that I can use later to show that the work that I've done in cybersecurity is part of my portfolio? This is a bit of a challenge when you start getting into the industry. You're trying to get that first job in technology, and you're trying to prove to people that you really know this technology. They don't know you. They've never met you before. They don't understand the background that you have. They don't know the work that you've done. And sometimes it's very difficult to get that across to someone if you've never had a professional IT job before. So one of the things a lot of people will ask and recommend and say is that you should do some work yourself, document that work so that you now have something to show. A good example of that's a home lab. That's one of the things Anonymous mentioned. There's a video, in fact, that is attached. It is in the YouTube video description of this video. And the video is called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. And I talk about this because I think there's 4 major elements that go into showing a prospective employer how well you can do this job. The first objective, or the first element, is that you have some type of formal education. As much as we talk about certifications, as much as we talk about that colleges and universities are this and college and universities are that, employers still really like colleges and universities. So getting some type of formal degree, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, really resonates still with employers. So as long as they're still asking for those, that still becomes a very important element. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need a degree in computing. My degree is in business. It is not a technical degree. Some might argue that's because there was no technology when I went through college. How dare you? How dare you, sir? That was not the case. Part of the challenges with this in colleges and universities is they tend to equate IT with computer science. But in the actual world, outside of the academic realm, those are two very, very, very different things and barely, if ever, are connected to each other. The things that we do in computer science have nothing to do with the things we do in IT. So that's one of the challenges, is that there was a management information systems degree where I went to school at Florida State University and did graduate from Florida State University. Did I say barely graduate? Either way, it worked out. We got it, and I got the degree. The MIS degree was really more about business on one side and programming on the other. I think a lot of universities are still that way, but they're starting to come around. But getting some type of formal degree shows an employer you're able to stick with a very high-level training opportunity. Universities don't like me to refer to what they're doing as training because technically they don't even like doing anything related to training. It's more of learning, a broader learning that you've been able to do. So that's important to employers. It should be important to you. The second of these elements is some type of industry certification. Something we know about. Getting a Security Plus or a Network Plus or an A Plus. Which one is the right one to get? I don't know. Which one is your prospective employer asking for? Ultimately, there are a number of very high-profile certifications, but being able to answer that question, which I get multiple times a day, what certification should I get? And my answer is always, I don't know. What certification should you get? What are you trying to do? What's your objective? You could go in many different directions, and maybe the direction is one that both interests you from a technology perspective, and it's also one that maybe employers are asking about. That would be a good love connection. That'd be a good combination that correlates together. But often, an employer might be asking for an A+. So if the employer is asking for A+, why would you go get a different certification? That doesn't make much sense. So it's sometimes useful to even have multiple certs just so you can fill in those blanks for that particular employer. The third thing on that list is that you have some type of practical experience. And that comes back to the question that Anonymous asked, which is, how do I get that practical experience? Yeah, it's a challenge. It's that catch-22 that everybody goes through when you're trying to get that first job in a particular industry. They want someone with some type of experience. But how do you get someone with experience if you're not hiring people to get the experience? There's the problem that we're trying to work through. So the way to fix that problem is to make people aware of your experience, even if it is not professional experience. I refer to this as practical experience. So in my world, a professional job is one where you get paid. One that is practical is one maybe where you did it yourself. In a way, you're paying yourself. You're paying yourself with knowledge. You're paying yourself with opportunity. You're paying yourself with maybe positioning yourself to get a little bit lucky with these job roles when you finally sit down and have an interview. Here's what I would recommend, and I mentioned this in the video, is it might be good to create your own home lab and to be able to go through a particular project with that home lab. For security, for example, it would be great if you could build a system that was running an open source or something publicly available firewall. There are a number of choices out there that can do this. Now, why would you do that rather than just running the firewall that you already have at home? Well, you should probably still use the firewall you have at home, to be fair, until you're very familiar with this. But you want to be able to set up the software, get it running on the system. Maybe you have to install Linux. Maybe it runs in Windows. Maybe it has its own operating system. That can happen. and you're installing the software, you're getting it running, you're configuring it with the network configurations. Maybe you're using it in a layer 3 mode, so it's actually doing routing for you. So you're not only setting up a firewall, you're also setting up an operating system, you're also setting up a router. And then once that's running, you're configuring the firewall and setting up policies and maybe setting up reports. This is the same process you go through in an enterprise when you are setting up a large-scale firewall. This is something a lot of people don't realize. Let's take, for example, and I'm kind of putting this there because I come to you as a senior systems engineer formerly with Palo Alto Networks. My specialty was firewalls. I designed and implemented firewalls in some of the largest networks in the world and some of the biggest data centers in the world. And we did it basically with the same technology that you could run at home. In fact, if you look at Palo Alto Networks, they have fantastically large terabyte throughput firewalls that you put in some of the biggest networks in the world. They also have the same firewall software, the exact same firewall software running as a VM. And that's obviously for very small configurations, but that's a really good example of how you can take a firewall technology and run it at home, but you're effectively learning the same skills and the same techniques that you would use on the big boy firewalls that are on those very large high-speed networks. So that's great. But I'll tell you, it's not just about doing it. And here's the thing that a lot of people miss with a home lab. Okay, I installed the operating system, I installed the software, I fixed all the bugs, installing it, the problems I ran into, got it running, got the firewall running. There it is. It's now working. There's the project, and I can tell people I installed a firewall. No, that's not the story. You missed the most important part of that process. And the most important part of that process, in my mind, is when you ran into a problem. Don't tell me you installed that firewall and didn't run into any problems. Yes, you did. You ran into multiple problems along the way that you had to solve. How do you choose which Linux operating system to install? When you installed the Linux operating system, did you run into a problem? Yes, you did. I don't know what that problem was for you, but it was something. It was getting it to run in a VM. It was getting it to run with the right, I downloaded the wrong version of that Linux. I downloaded the Intel version. I needed one that was for a different chipset. There's a lot of problems you run into. When you have a problem, this is not a speed run. By the way, your home lab is not there for you to do things quickly. Your home lab is there for you to do things slowly. And when you run into a problem, that should be a fantastic opportunity for you. A lot of times we look at problems like, oh, I have to solve this problem. This is going to be so, I got to go through the process of figuring out what the problem is, and we have to look at log files, and we have to go. That is, you look at that negatively, you've missed the whole point. This is your chance to create a story. And that's what employers want to hear from you when you go to an interview. They want you to talk about your stories. And you need to have 2 or 3 of these in your pocket, by the way. So set up your operating system, get your firewall running, and maybe during the installation of the firewall software, you got an error that said this. Document that. Oh, got an error. It says this. So I try to do this. What did we do to help fix that problem? Well, I Googled the issue. First, I put it in AI. It told me something about bananas. Okay, well, that didn't work. Let's maybe find a good website to go to. We'll go to the actual Google search, and we'll find, oh, there's something about firewalls. Let's go into that one. So we'll go into firewalls. We'll figure out an error message. Oh, I found an article that matches the error message I found. Let's implement that fix. Let's have a look at the issue. We can confirm that issue was the one. Let's implement the fix. Did the fix resolve the problem? Yes, it did. Problem solved. Document what you did. You may probably never run into this problem again. When would you ever install this software again in this way, in this home lab, with that particular version and that particular error? But it's not about you documenting it. It's about now having a story. And when you get that question they always asked, which is, what problem have you run into and how did you solve it? Like, let me just tell you about my yesterday. Let me tell you about this weekend that we did. And you can talk about the installation process. There's also other stories that come from this. Once you get the firewall up and running, I even mentioned this one in the video, I believe. Once you get the firewall up and running and it's passing traffic and perhaps more importantly, blocking malicious traffic or traffic you don't want, now you can start creating reports. Put that firewall on your network, put it on your internet connection. Maybe don't connect it to your local network quite yet, but put it on your internet side and have it just start collecting information and log files based on what it's seeing coming inbound from the internet. That would be useful because then you can leave it for an hour, for 6 hours, for 24 hours, and now you can create a report. During that 24-hour time frame, how many times was a known attack used against your firewall? It will be a number that is more than 0, I assure you. And this is the question that I think you want to have in that interview. And you can tell them, oh, you'll never believe what I found once I plugged into the firewall. I sound like I'm some type of clickbait on the internet. You'll never guess what we found. 7 great reasons to install a home lab firewall. You won't believe number 6, that kind of thing. So you can be in the interview and say, I plugged this in. You try to take a guess at how many people attacked my system without me ever sending information out. That I just plugged it in, it got an IP address, here's the report. And then you show reports. You've run reports. By the way, running reports in an enterprise for some reason is like pulling teeth. It's like an impossible task that nobody can do and nobody wants to do. So the fact that you're able to pull that out and say, here's a report, maybe you even have it on a piece of paper. Crazy, I know. That's just what I'm saying. You've printed it out. This is the case where you're doing one of those very unusual in-person interviews. You pull out that piece of paper, you hand it to them. That's for you to keep. That is a report of all of those attacks and what they were. I went through each one of those attacks to figure out what started this and where it came from. And now you can even go more into that detail. This particular attack is one that's created by this botnet. This particular attack is one that probably was this type of scripting kitty that was going. This particular attack is a well-known vulnerability associated with Windows SMB. This particular, just go down the list. You've done all the legwork. Just that one exercise, if somebody came to an interview, and I speak as someone who used to be a hiring manager for systems engineers, if you came to me with that and said, here's what I found, like, how can I get you into my firewall team right now and just start pouring through these logs and going through the details of these and making sure that we have all of the data and creating reports for these. We don't have any of this information now. Or they're now thinking we could use that same knowledge over on the cloud side. We could use that same knowledge over on our network team. That's what you want them to start thinking about. So even just one project, that's just one of many that you could do dealing with that particular firewall technology really does have some scope. I think I've talked a lot about that particular question that Anonymous sent in, but that gives you some idea of why I think that is so important and why you should really focus on that if you're somebody who is looking for a job, especially in this very difficult job market right now. It's a bit of a challenge. You need some way to differentiate yourself. You should already be thinking about that strategy if you are currently out in the job market. How do you get people to look at your resume? And I have other techniques within that video that describe different ways to do it. So make sure you do that. The last element, by the way, of those 4 elements, because I told you a formal education, industry certification, you have some type of practical experience. The last one is you know someone who already works there. See, it is not just what you know, it is also who you know, which, by the way, is the correct, in my mind, that's the correct way to think about that scenario. A lot of people say, it's just what you know. You don't have to be knowledgeable. You sort of do need to be knowledgeable. But if you know someone who already works there, there is so much more that swings in your favor. For many different reasons. I go into that in the video. That's in the YouTube video description of this video. It's a video called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. And it's just been there. I did that video a couple years ago. It's still absolutely 100% valid. Stick with that, and I think that'll give you some ideas. Let's keep going through the rest of our list. We've got more to go through here. Let's see. Okay, let's go through. I love making lists, so let's do another list of things. I already talked about my list of things you can do to get a job in IT. Let's do another list. This is from N. N says, hello, I'm scheduled to take my Security Plus exam in January. We're getting close. I have been studying for the past 2.5 months by listening to your videos, doing a course on the CompTIA website provided by bootcamp I attended, and doing practice questions and a test. Do you have other suggestions for me to be prepared for the exam? Thank you. Oh, I do. I have a list. There's always a list that I have. We have a method that we recommend on our site called the WRAP method, WRAP. I know, you look at me, you instantly think wrapping. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. WRAP is where we go to understand where we should focus with studying for these exams. The W in WRAP is someone who is going through the process of watching the videos. W is for watching. We'll go to our YouTube video channel. We've got all of our videos available for free. There's a lot out there that you can go through and look at. Every single one of our videos is there. So watch a good video course. It can be ours or someone else's. I think ours is pretty good, so you can go through that one. The R in WRAP is referring to reading a good book. Even though I make a video course, I understand there's certainly value in reading a book. There's a lot more detail in book because the way that you get information across to you in reading is very different than the way information is presented to you in a video. I know the information, the topics are similar, but the way that you're learning from those study materials is different. Seeing something demonstrated on the screen is different than seeing someone write about the experience in a book. And the details you can get from a book are much denser than the details you can have in a video, just because those are two different types of media. So I think you should have both. I think you should have a good video course with the watching, and you should have a good book with the reading. The A is applying this knowledge in some way that is practical. And I think one of the great ways to do this is labs. Ed mentioned in this message that I'm doing some labs. That's a great place to go. Maybe once you're through the videos, once you're through the book, go through those labs and understand the things that you need to know. Did we even talk about labs on here? I don't think so. I think we just did practice questions and a test. You mentioned software that you got as part of the boot camp on the website. Maybe that course has labs in it. And I'm thinking you got access to CertMaster Learn or something similar. And those tend to have some labs inside of them. Maybe having a third-party set of labs would be an idea, or additional labs, or more hands-on, depending on the course that you are doing. Security Plus doesn't have in the exam objectives any specific command line utilities, so there's not a lot you have to worry about there. It's more important that you understand the broader scope of how these connect together, and there are some nice labs or performance-based questions that might be useful to go through. The P in the WRAP plan, WRAP method, is for practice. Practice exams are so important, and we put them last, not only because that's the way you spell WRAP, but that is the thing you should do last. Once you've gone through videos, once you've read the book, once you've gone through hands-on lab practice, how well did we retain this information? How well could we really answer questions on this exam? I highly recommend you get a practice exams book that has been specifically written with the same style, the same tone, the same method of getting information across to you as the actual exam. It's nice that somebody has done that already. I run across a lot of practice exams on the internet that are either too simple, or the topics are not applicable to the current exam, or the questions and answers are just wrong. I run into that probably the most often. People will try to email me and say, I saw this question online. I don't think it's right. And I'll say, well, it's not, but I can't help you with that. You need to go back to the person that wrote the bad question. I could spend my entire day talking to people about bad questions. None of them are mine, though. I tried to give you questions that are really well thought out, well written. I write every single one of these questions. This is not AI. This is not some third party that was hired from some other country to write questions for you. I write these questions. I think that is the only way to ensure that they really are accurate and they go right to the heart of the Security Plus exam. That's an important part for us. So we are constantly doing that and thinking about it when we're going through these exam questions. So I think you're doing all the right things in. I think you just need to make sure that you lock in all of those topics. And if you aren't sure, go back to your exam objectives. They will tell you if you know it. So for example, let's say, well, do we really know our content? Well, let's start somewhere. We'll start with like 3.3. Compare and contrast concepts and strategies to protect data. Data types like regulated data. Well, I hit the wrong button there. Let me go back to regulated data. There it is. What is regulated data? When would you see regulated data? How would you use regulated data? How important is that to the overall security of the data in your environment? If you can answer that one, check mark. So you might want to mark that one in green or put a check mark on it, or just leave it as it is. Trade secret. You think, oh, how does trade secret work into data types? I'm not quite sure. I need a little bit more with that one. Maybe we circle that one. Maybe we mark that one in red. Let's go to the next bullet, intellectual property. I know about that one. Here's what intellectual property is. Here's why it's an important data type. Here's what we need to do to protect it. What about legal information? So just go through this list. This is the ultimate checklist before you walk into your exam room. This will tell you if you are ready. It will tell you the topics you really know well. It will tell you the topics you really don't know very well. It's quite an investment to take this exam. These exams are not cheap. So before you walk into the exam, before you even schedule your exam, go through this list in detail. Again, this takes a long time. You may be looking at this and going, this is going to take me a long time to go through every single one of these bullets and figure, yes, it is. It will take you a bit of time to go through every single one of those bullets, but that's what it takes to really understand if you're ready to take this exam. And instead of walking into a room, and I just hear this so often, and it's just heartbreaking when people come back to me after taking an exam and they say, oh, I took the exam and there was stuff on it I wasn't expecting. And I said, what do you mean? What type of things did you see that just broadly that you weren't expecting? Don't tell me an exact question, but what kind of topics threw you? Oh, they gave me a question about regulated data types, and they asked me about trade secrets. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I said, well, those are clearly listed in the CompTIA exam objectives, and this is the part that gets me, is they say, what are the CompTIA exam objectives? We could have saved you some money. We could have saved you some time. We could have maybe honed your knowledge just a little bit. And then I tell them, go to the CompTIA website, go to professormesser.com/objectives, and go through this list. And very often they will tell me, oh, I downloaded it, I had a look at it, I heard you talking about it, but I thought it was just a very broad overview of the topics. But no, it tells you everything. It's a detailed list. It's your checklist. It's everything. So they go through that list, they figure out where their shortcomings were, they study up a little more, and then they go back in the exam. And now they're really prepared. Now they're really ready to take the exam because they've gone through every single one of those exam objectives. So I think you are doing all the right things. I think now we need to maybe add a little structure to those right things and give you something quantitatively that you can lock in and go, I think I'm really not quite ready to take the exam. Or now that I've looked at the exam objectives and listed out the things I know and I don't know, I know about 90% of this. I think we're ready to sit down and take the exam. So I'm not saying that you need to know the exam objectives 100%. That would be ideal, but that is also not practical. And one of the things we like to do here is give you practical ways to study. I'm not going to tell you to spend every moment of every day learning every objective. I don't think humans are built that way. I think we need to get about 90% of this down. Now we can go take the exam. And I think that's a good way to focus on this and kind of break out where the best methods, strategies for study might be. I think that's a good one. Let's keep going through this list. I did not put this in here. This is not a real thing, but to follow up on that last question, the question is, how would you compare the difficulty between your practice exams and the actual exam? Well, I didn't really mention it earlier. I guess I did just most recently, but I built the questions in this book to have a very similar difficulty level and a very similar style to the actual exam. None of these questions in this book are actual exam questions. That is what we call in the industry cheating. This is not a cheating book. This is a legitimate book, original questions, 100% original questions, but written in a same style and a same tone as the actual exam. That takes a bit of doing, by the way. So it took us a while to figure out how to do that, but we did. And that's why I think that's an important part of this. It's not just a bunch of questions I threw together. There's a lot of purpose and a lot of very specific style and tone in that book. So I would say the difficulty level between my practice exams and the actual exam ideally are 1-to-1. It's the same level of difficulty as you would expect to find on an actual exam without it being actual exam questions. Actual exam questions are not available, nor should they be. You only see the actual exam questions when you sit down for, well, the actual exam. That's how you would focus on those. Let's keep going through our list of questions that you have. Such great questions you are submitting. You can, of course, submit questions at any time following the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's talk about philosophies and understanding what those might be. Here's a question about philosophy from Ola. It says, hi, Professor Messer, what strategy would you recommend for taking the Security Plus exam? Should we start with the performance-based questions first and then move to the multiple choice questions? Or should I skip the performance-based questions and come back to them at the end? What works best in practice? This is really a question where you sort of could go either way. Let's first talk about the exam itself. When you sit down for the exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are performance-based questions. Let's say that it's a full exam of 90 questions, which in itself would be unusual, but it's a good round number, so we're using that. 90-question exam. Let's say the first 5 questions are performance-based questions. And then the rest of the 85 questions are multiple choice. You can see that there are many, many, many more multiple choice questions than there are performance-based questions. One of the challenges, though, is these performance-based questions you get, you don't know how much they are scored. You don't know if you get that question right, how many points do you get? Not only do you not know how they are scored, you will never know how they are scored. That information will never be disclosed to you. So all of this is a guess from a scoring perspective, so I don't guess. So we don't even include that as part of this scenario. Then you have 85 questions that are multiple choice. Again, we have no idea how many points each multiple choice question is worth. It could be that the performance-based questions are worth more than the multiple choice. It could also just as reasonably be that the multiple choice questions are worth more than the performance-based questions. We simply don't know. And you could make some inferences, but your inferences could be right or they could be wrong. And as I mentioned, you will never know if you are right or wrong. So I think speculating on that is a waste of time because ultimately there's no way to confirm whether what you're doing is the right strategy or not. So knowing that we have no way to tell how much any of these are worth, we just got a bunch of questions here. One thing that you are able to do in the CompTIA exams is jump around to any question you would like. Once you go through all of the questions, you're now sort of enabled to move around the exam and immediately go back to any question you would like. Not all industry exams are this way. For example, if you're taking a Cisco exam, you go to question number 1, you answer question number 1, and you click next. That's it. Once you're on question number 2, you can't go back to question number 1. If you click next and then realize, oh, wait, I think it was the other answer, well, it's too late. You already hit the button. You cannot go back to that one. So that particular exam will only lead you down a particular road. In fact, it might change the questions you get based on the way that you're answering previous questions. That doesn't work that way with CompTIA. CompTIA is an exam where once you go through all of the questions, you're able to jump around anywhere within that particular exam because all of the questions presented on the exam were predefined the moment you sat down, and you have access to all of them as part of that. This means that you could skip over questions. You can mark them. There's a flagging option at the top of the screen. You can flag a question and then just keep moving. Flag a question next, flag a question next, flag a question next. You can flag all of the performance-based questions, then go through all the multiple choice. Then it brings up a screen that shows you all of the questions numbered. It tells you whether you answered the question or not, and it tells you whether you flagged the question or not. So you can go to that screen and go, let's go back to question number 7, click, and it'll take you right back to question number 7. You can answer that question, remove the flag, go back to your main list, figure out where the next one is you want to go to. That might be a good strategy for you. And a lot of people tend to get wrapped up with the performance-based questions at the beginning. Performance-based questions tend to have a little more reading. They tend to have a little more moving parts to them, more things you have to click on. It's sort of like taking a multiple choice, like 5 multiple choice questions and kind of squeezing it into one performance-based question from a time perspective. And a lot of people are not looking at the clock, and they probably should be. So if you feel that time and the management of time is a challenge, you might want to skip over the performance-based questions, maybe read them a little bit so you know what the topic is about, and then go straight to multiple choice. I think that's probably a pretty good strategy, especially because now that you have read through the performance-based questions, which tend to take a little bit of time, you understand what topics are associated with them. What you may find is that the multiple choice questions, albeit a bit smaller in scope, might give you clues about technologies that you suddenly remember. So they're effectively, the multiple choice questions are jogging your memory about topics that you can now use to answer the performance-based questions. So sometimes the exam works against itself or with itself, depending on how you want to look at that, so that going through the multiple choice helps you answer questions that other multiple choice questions might ask, or questions associated with your performance-based questions. Always leave enough time to answer every question. Always answer something in every question. Do not leave questions blank on your exam. The one thing we do know is you only get points if you get a question right, and they don't subtract points for getting a question wrong. You aren't penalized for guessing. So guessing is free. If you guess and get it right, that's a bonus. So if you don't know the answer, don't just leave it there. Put something in the bubble. Put something in that link. That may be important to you. The strategy you choose will be completely up to you, one that fits best for you. Some people have told me, no, I like doing the performance-based questions, getting them out of the way. I rush through them as fast as I can, then I go to multiple choice. Some people are really fast with their exams. Some people will go through this 90-minute exam in 45 minutes. They'll half the time. And if you're one of those people, you read fast and you answer questions fast and you go through these exams really quickly, maybe it then doesn't matter in what order you do these. For a lot of us that spend a lot of time on our exam, we like to read very slowly through the questions and to figure out the answers to these. Okay, I need a little bit more time. Time management is important for me. Maybe I will skip over performance-based question. Either way, you really can't go wrong. It's really more about time management than anything else. You're going to have to answer the question eventually. So make sure you answer it in the time frame that is available to you. The clock is always at the top of the screen. You will always know how much time you have left. So another place to go for all of those. Some person asked, how long does it take for a physical order to arrive once it's ordered? So if you ordered the course notes or the practice exams, you're waiting for these to arrive. It takes me about 5 to 7 business days to print these and ship them out. We have a big list, so it takes quite a bit of time to get those processed. And they are being printed in the closest printing that we have to you. So if you are in the UK, we're printing in the UK. If you're in North America, we're printing in North America, that type of thing. And then it then has to be shipped. So that might be another week. So it takes a couple weeks to get to you. International tend to be a little bit longer, but not much. International is pretty good right now. Obviously, the holiday season is upon us and things take a little bit longer because there's just more boxes in the system. But on a normal, once we hit the top of the month, once we're in January, it will probably be back to its normal self. But even that isn't greatly delayed. There are obviously times around the world. This year, Canada had a mail outage. They had people that were on strike for the mail, so we weren't able to ship very well in Canada for a little bit of time. There were times when I couldn't ship to the Ukraine for obvious reasons. So those types of things happen too. We'll have to figure out the details and maybe understand a little bit more about how to get those out to you. As we think we get them as fast as we possibly can. And it's really the printing and the shipping takes a little bit of time. But remember, you still have access to the digital version of this book for that entire time. So you can start reading it the moment you purchase. You can download it and it's right there on your screen and you can take it with you. And when the physical book arrives, now you have something you can sit down and flip through, and you can just go right to page 15 where you left off and keep all of that happening. So another one of those to consider. Let's keep going through the questions that you have. We do have a little bit of time left, so we'll keep going down this list. There were a lot of people that asked me this. I got a few of these. There were a few people that were talking in the questions about how much are these questions worth? What percent of questions will be performance-based? What percent of questions will be multiple choice? We don't know for sure. The best I can tell you, the performance-based questions are a handful of questions you get at the beginning of your exam. There are people that have told me I got 2 performance-based questions. I got 5 performance-based questions. On some of these exams, and it changes, it depends on which exam you're taking, you might get 7 performance-based questions. I've seen people get that on Network Plus, for example. The total number is different depending on the exam you take because it's a random set of questions you get every time you sit down for an exam. And the questions you get on your exam will probably be very different than somebody else who takes this exam right next to you. They're all randomized. You get a different set of questions. And if you fail the first time and you take the exam again, you'll notice it's a completely different set of questions. There probably won't be a lot of duplicates there. There might be one or two, just statistically, you'll probably hit one or two duplicates, but they tend to be very different. So if you sit down the second time, you're thinking, these are not the questions I got the first time. That's right. They're not the questions you got the first time. That's by design. They have a big pool of questions that they go through. And again, you have no idea what those questions are worth on the exam either. So that's another one of those we have to think about. Okay, let's keep going through our list of questions that you have. We have so many good security questions in here and CompTIA questions that we have in here. I've given a number of these questions sort of overlap. Hopefully some of the answers I've given you so far give you some context into ways that you can apply those questions. I've got some multiples in here too, but that's okay. I would rather you ask the question, it be a duplicate, than asking the question and it never, or not asking the question, it never getting to me. So I'm glad we were able to validate that. That should also give you an idea of the way to study and what to study. These are sometimes the biggest problems. I think the exam objectives are the most important part of this. One moment. Just trying to, in real time, stifle a sneeze on the live stream. Now my eyes are watering making that happen. Let's go back to your questions. Here's a question I get a lot of. It's kind of hard to explain. This question is, has the exam guide been updated with new versions of the certification test? If you're referring to the exam guide as our course notes and practice exams, then yes, of course, we keep all of our study materials updated to the latest version of the exam. And you'll notice that on these, every one of our study materials has the number of the exam on the study materials. If you're watching a video, it's on the video. If you have a practice exams book, it's on the practice exams book, SY0-701. If you have the course notes, it's on the course notes, SY0-701. So you always know that you have the right set of questions, the right set of course notes, the right set of videos for the exam you're planning to take. And as I mentioned earlier, the 701 is the latest version of the CompTIA exam. So yes, all of our study materials for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and anything that we ever do is always updated to the latest version of the exam. You can be rest assured that you are getting the most accurate, the most comprehensive, and something that fits perfectly to the CompTIA exam objectives and what will be expected of you when you walk into the exam room. Not every training provider can tell you that. In fact, most training providers don't follow that policy for whatever reason. I don't know what they're thinking, but I think that's the best way to approach an exam, is to study the things that are actually on the exam. I know, that's crazy. That's sort of where we go with that. So all of my study materials have been updated with versions of the certification exam. If you have a book from another publisher or study materials from another publisher and you're just not sure, I think you should ask that publisher. They would be the ones that would be in the best position to be able to answer that question. Let's keep going through the list. I've got more in here. Really remarkable how my profanity filter stops some of these questions that, by the way, have no profanity in them. Just I can override that. Do not worry to work through that. There's a lot of things that you would work through. Let's answer a question now about a different set of topics. I want to find the right link to go to so that I can provide you with these details. And the question is one. This applies to people in many different scenarios. This is one from TJ. Says, I'm paralyzed and quadriplegic. How do accommodations, how would that work for someone like me? This is one that applies to not just people who may have a physical accommodation they need. Maybe the problem is that they have something physical, like you're quadriplegic. You have a system set up to be able to answer these questions, or have someone sit with you who can mark the screen while you are answering. Those are perfectly reasonable accommodations, and you can get accommodations for something like that. We also have scenarios that may not be quite as physical. Maybe it is something where English is your second language. That's not unusual in the United States or other places around the world where there may be a primary language for the country you're in, but you speak English after coming from a different country, so English is not your first language. There are accommodations for that as well, and accommodations for everything in between. So the way that you can address some of those accommodations is by going to the CompTIA website. If you search for CompTIA exam accommodations, you will run across this frequently asked questions file that talks about what are these accommodations and how do I request an accommodation. So if you need extra testing time, a separate testing room, if you need to have different breaks during the exam, all of those things are available for you if you are scheduling something with CompTIA. And they have a request accommodations page that gives you a full set of instructions and how to go through this process. This is on the Pearson VUE website because the accommodation is managed by Pearson. They're the ones that manage the testing process, whether you are testing in a testing center or testing online. It is all Pearson, for better or for worse. Whether you want it or not, that's what you're getting. We'll find CompTIA on this big list. We'll click that. It says, here is the... No thanks. I will not share my feedback. The accommodation process for CompTIA, and they take you through the entire process. There's a series of requests. You have to provide documentation. You have to go through the process of this, but it is a process that is available, and it is on their website, and it's well documented. It may take some time to do. There may be some back and forth that you have to do. There's a little bit of work that goes into this, but it is something that I find that they ultimately get the accommodation for the people that need it, and that's something that might help you for the exam. CompTIA does a pretty good job at providing these accommodations and making sure there's the ability to have this exam available for everybody who wants to take the exam. So have a look at those accommodations. And of course, you can always access and get help directly from CompTIA. If you can't find that document and you can't figure out where to go from there, go to help.comptia.org and you'll find this nice lady here who says, welcome to CompTIA Help. Here's the guy that can provide you with access to your CompTIA account and more. Right here at the bottom is a we're here to help. And it says, didn't find what you're looking for. You can submit a help request right at the bottom. So if you run into a scenario where you're just not getting the information you need from that article, or you want more information, they do have a pretty well documented process in help.comptia.org to find or ask about the thing that you want to know about. Let's keep going through our list of questions that you have. I don't know exactly. There's some questions that we are getting where people are referencing things that I don't know exactly what you are referencing. Maybe you can provide me with some context because I've not seen this article. I have a feeling this is the industry needing to write an article because it's the holidays. This article asks, have you seen in the news recently? Already I can tell you no, because I don't spend a lot of time reading the news. Have you seen in the news recently about the tap feature being an issue during the holiday season? No. And how timely your question is, because we just showed you how it is probably the most secure method for paying for something is using your phone to tap and pay for that thing. So I don't know what this article was about. Probably some corner case of somebody stopping you on the street and having you, I don't know. They always come up with some crazy idea about, here's things happening in your area. This is so important that you have to know right now, but we're not going to tell you. You have to tune in at 11. I read an article about it and thought it was interesting. I'd love to read the article. You're more than welcome to send this to me. I will be glad to look at it, and I'll give you my opinion of what I think. How do you think this would work? I have no idea what they're talking about, quite honestly. One of the challenges you get with technology and media, specifically news media, is that news media have spent a lot of time understanding how important being able to produce a news article or a news event on television. There's a lot of time they spent in journalism school. They understand the right things to say, the wrong things to say, how to put these news articles together and present these news events. But these are people that are really good at journalism, but they really don't know a lot about technology, certainly not as much as we know. And sometimes the translation between the technical world and the consumer news world is not a great connection. And sometimes they have maybe they stretch a little bit of the truth in order to make it seem as if the world is ending and you should watch this news report as soon as possible. I understand the reason they're doing it. I don't necessarily agree with why they're doing it, but I understand what they're doing. Here's a corner case of a thing that could happen. Let's talk about it as a problem that is for everybody. The world is ending. Tune in at 11 is effectively what we often see this presented as. So I suspect this may be one of those news articles that was, don't tap when you buy something at the store, here's what could happen to you. Okay, we'll have to see what you're talking about, something that could happen to me. Maybe they've come up with a corner case, something that's very specific that could happen, but it would be so unusual and outside the scope of reality that it doesn't happen. It never has happened, but it could. So you need to know about it. We need to protect the children. That's what it all comes back to, I guess. We have to all protect the children. That's where we make our decisions when it comes to something like that. So I don't know. Send me the article. Maybe they've come across something we should all be aware of, and they've broken cryptography, and now nothing is safe. Guard your valuables. Holiday is no longer safe. We'll find out about it. Tune in at 11. We'll talk about that more in our next video. Tune in 11. Let's see if we have other questions that have come through. We've got quite a bit that we can step through. People asking about things that we've already discussed. I have to get through the piece of this. Somebody was talking about setting up a home lab. A couple questions came in about a home lab. The home lab itself is an interesting one. A lot of people talk about, how do I even get started with this? Do I use a standalone computer and set up my home lab? Maybe that's the one I put my firewall on. Do I do this in a virtual machine? Both of those are completely viable ways to set these things up. A virtual machine is functionally the same thing as a physical machine. Obviously, there's no physical ports to connect to. Everything is virtualized. But if you don't have a physical machine, you don't have the funds to get a physical machine, well, maybe the virtual machine is a good option for you. If you're setting up a firewall, maybe you would like to have something physical. Maybe you already have an old computer sitting around somewhere. Maybe you want to buy something that's relatively inexpensive off the internet. They have those very small Linux systems you can buy these days that are a few $100s, and that might be perfect for a home lab. There's always different options and being able to do this. If that might be even a good question to ask over at the Home Lab subreddit. That'd be a good place to go to get other people's opinions. Usually I will go there and look at the articles that people are posting, the questions they have, because usually somebody will say, oh, I've been using this little mini computer from this company. It cost me $300 and I've been able to do all of this with it. Okay, that gives me some ideas of things that I might want to do. Or maybe you can find a relatively inexpensive computer online or on eBay or from a friend. Those are types of things that you need to find that scrap for it, because Linux runs on almost anything. Really, your only limitation might be CPU and might be memory, but you might be able to work through that because Linux is very streamlined. Maybe that's where you start. And you may find that you're able to build on that. Maybe you move it from a physical to a virtual environment or vice versa. Got different things you can do. I think those would be a good ways to get your hands on hardware if you don't have any already. There's lots of great virtualization options out there regardless of what you do. Use those virtualization options. Can you use a gaming PC? You can. Virtualization works anywhere, and it won't affect the configuration of your gaming operating system or anything else that is on your gaming computer. But if you've got a gaming system, you probably have a lot of memory or enough to run virtual machines. You probably have a pretty nice graphics card to be able to run them pretty quick, and you probably have plenty of storage space on there. Well, if you're a gamer, you might not. The way I load up software, you might not have enough storage space, but it probably has the ability. There's probably plenty of capacity if you just delete off some of those save games you did on that thing you haven't played for a year. And you have enough room to build out a little operating system, run it, and it won't affect anything with your gaming infrastructure. That's a great way to do it. Works that way on any system, not just a gaming PC. Works that way on any PC, which is why virtualization is so useful. If you're on Windows, there's plenty of great free options for virtualization. VMware Workstation is great for virtualization. You've got VirtualBox is another great way. There's lots of things that you can use to virtualize, or you can download and use virtualization software that runs on bare metal. Maybe you reboot into your virtual environment. You can really take this to the extreme build it out as if it was a real VM server in a real organization's data center. That might be something to think about. Maybe that's your second or third lab that you do. Once you get VMs up, maybe you've never even loaded a VM before. There's your first lab. Download some virtual machine software that runs on the desktop of your operating system, like you've got VirtualBox, or maybe you're running VMware Workstation. Load that up. Now create a virtual machine, install Linux onto that virtual machine or Windows or whatever you'd like to install, and then run it. That's your first step. And that's your really, I'm sort of giving you that hook that's now going to get you into the rest of the technology that you will build upon. That's what we do in this technology world, is we build on those technologies. So once you know virtual machines, now a whole world of things opens up to you. Well, I could run Windows Server on here. I can run a Linux web server here. I can run a database server. I could have a separate client Windows machine here, and I can connect all of them together and start running applications, loading up things from a web server, saving things to a file server, logging into Microsoft Active Directory infrastructure. And I never really did anything physically. It's all in these virtual machines. If you're familiar with my A+ course, for example, there's a big section in there on using virtual machines, not using virtual machines, a big section on Active Directory. And I show very detailed examples of how you would configure the Active Directory server and how you would configure things on the client, the Windows client, to be able to do things like login scripts, like folder redirection. Those are relatively involved configuration options, but I show them to you in real time on the screen. We step through it. You click this first, then you click this, then you click this. It shows this on the screen. Then you go over to the client. We bring that up on the screen and we click through these. That entire process on your screen in that video looks like it's on a physical device, but in reality, those are just VMs that are running. And if I wanted to bring them back up and do some more Active Directory, I just tell those VMs to restart themselves. And now we're doing that. So a lot of great opportunities there. Once you get into the world of virtualization and to some degree containerization, if you want to take it to the next level, that really opens up a whole bunch of conversations you can have during an interview, where you can talk about the differences between configuring virtual machines and configuring containers, from implementing virtual machine technologies and implementing those same technologies in a containered environment, being able to move those from machine to machine. How big was the container versus how big the VM was, and why was that different? We could keep going with this home lab. So maybe that sparks some ideas in your mind of things you could do to make that happen. So I think that would be very, very useful to have there. Yeah, this is a great recommendation in the chat, was maybe we can create a home lab. Philip says maybe we can create a home lab chat if there isn't already one on the Discord. That's actually not a bad idea. So my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this, send me an email, remind me we should look into doing something like that. That might be something fun to play around with. People might have some good ideas of virtual machines, home labs, links, documentation, and other things we can do to help make ourselves more technology aware and more knowledgeable in these very interesting and intricate technologies, especially since we're now in the holidays. A lot of us we've got time off of work. We got time off of school. It's a great time to do something like that. Let's keep going through this list. This is more of kind of behind the scenes. How did these things work? But it's a good question to ask from Elizabeth, who asks, hello, Professor, can I get CEU points if I watch previous videos from the study group? I passed my Security Plus in November 2024. Have missed your videos up until today. Well, thank you. That's so nice. Can I still get a CEU when I watch the older videos? More importantly, more about me, can I still get the CEU when I watch the older videos? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. CompTIA requires you, if you are watching an on-demand video for CEU credit, you must get a documentation from the video provider saying that you have done this. They don't necessarily they don't really require this for watching live. And I don't know why. It seems like there's no big difference in that, but that's sort of where they go with it. So if you are watching this live, or whether you're watching it on demand, and you can go back and watch all of our on-demand videos if you would like, you can get a CEU for any of those, but you must follow that process that I give you in the video. You must get documentation from me to be able to submit that. Also, keep in mind, for those of you thinking, I need 30 CEUs to renew, I'll just watch 30 videos. No, you won't. Because CompTIA puts a cap on the number of videos or number of CEUs that you can get in a particular category. So for a webinar category CEU, which is what my videos in this live stream are categorized as, they're categorized as a webinar category CEU, you can get 10 of those put towards renewing Security Plus. I think you need 50 for Security Plus, don't you? I said 30, but I think that's Network Plus. I think Security Plus, you need 50. Well, 10 of those can be videos. The other 40 have to be something different. That's assuming, of course, that you are collecting CEUs as your renewal method. Many people don't even do that anymore. CompTIA provides you with a way to do it in about a day using their CertMaster CE. From a cost perspective, it's only slightly more expensive than submitting CEUs. You don't have to pay the maintenance fee if you're taking CertMaster CE, but the overall cost of CertMaster CE is just slightly more than if you had collected and sent in those maintenance fees. So that is a very good way to renew your certification, and then CEUs don't matter, which I think that really appeals to a lot of people. It appeals to me. Plus, being able to do it in a day. We've had people come into our Discord and they say, oh, I've got an emergency. My certification expires tomorrow. What can I do now to renew my certification? I have no CEUs. Well, it's very difficult unless there's something you have done in the past 3 years that does fit their 50 CEU category. A lot of these are attending a course or attending a class. Some of those give you 50 CEUs just by doing that, but you will need documentation from that course or documentation from that class. But if you've not done that, you just don't have any CEUs. What can you do? You sit down and take CertMaster CE. That's what we recommended to that individual. They bought it immediately, sat down with it, ran through it in a number of hours. When you finally finish it and click I'm done, I have answered all the questions correctly, and you click go and it says yes, submit it. It automatically is sent back to CompTIA and you are renewed for another 3 years. That's it. So there's nothing extra you have to do. There's no other CEUs you have to request. You don't have to send me any emails. You don't have to get any emails. You don't have to submit those CEUs. You don't have to do any of that. But as the chat room is going, maybe you shouldn't wait so long before doing this. Well, then you're not human, right? We all wait until the last second. We all have some level of procrastination inside of us. Some of us have more than others, but that's why whenever tax day comes up here in the US, it's April the 15th, everybody's scrambling to get their taxes done because we all waited until the last minute. Don't wait until the last minute is probably a good bit of advice, quite honestly. It's just sometimes it's not as practical as we would like it to be. So I think we all have that problem. I think we all suffer from that to some degree. Hopefully you don't suffer from that too much and have that there. I would recommend either collecting those CEUs, as I mentioned, or CertMaster CE. Both of those are quite good in being able to make that happen. Let's keep going through this list. I think there's quite a bit to go through here. I've got a lot in the, you guys have submitted some great questions. I wish I could go through all of them. I just don't have time. And in fact, we're well past the top of the hour right now. So I want to find a good one here to hit before we get further down this list. Let's talk about the way that we approach learning for these exams. This is very common to find. This is, what are your thoughts? Miguel asks, what are your thoughts on doing an IT-based boot camp? Is it worth like a 2-year degree on the computer science side or an IT-based certificate? This is one of the things we often do in our industry. We try to compare and contrast and somehow maybe even correlate together a skill set when we compare how the training was done in different areas. For example, if you get an industry certification, how does that compare to a 4-year degree? If you go to a boot camp, how does that compare to a certification? Or how does it compare to formal education? The answer is it doesn't. A boot camp compares to what you would get in a boot camp. A formal education is a formal education, and an industry certification is an industry certification. These are different types of credentials that were acquired in different ways, that taught you in different ways, and ultimately had different requirements associated with them. A 2-year or 4-year degree obviously has much more required than doing an industry certification or a boot camp. And a boot camp has a very different way of learning and perspective than an industry certification or a formal degree. Let's define boot camp in this scenario, though, because I think that's one thing that I often see sort of thrown out as a term, but never defined. And there are different uses of the term boot camp that I've run into. One of the most common uses is like a military boot camp. We're going to give you a lot of information and require a lot from you over a very short time frame. Generally, you tend to see those types of boot camps lasting a week, maybe lasting 2 weeks. And it is usually based on a set of topics, or in this particular case, on a specific certification. I would say those types of boot camps, as it applies to industry certifications, are relatively worthless. I say that because first, there's functionally, statistically, from a physics perspective, it is impossible to take that enormous list of exam objectives and somehow get all of this information across to you in a way that you can understand and recognize in the course of a 1 or 2 week period. It simply can't be done because there's not enough time in the day to do that. There's just no way to get all of that done in a reasonable way that would truly teach you. What some people will do is they will go through their own training prior to going to the boot camp, so that at the boot camp, they can maybe focus in more on the things that are covered during the boot camp. Well, if you've already spent all this time learning what you needed to know for the boot camp, why are you going to a boot camp? That doesn't make sense to me either. So that's not something that makes a lot of sense in that scenario. And the boot camp itself obviously isn't giving you everything you need. So that's not going to help you very much either. There are other definitions of a boot camp, however. I've seen people talk about boot camps as a college course, usually at a community college, where they are going through the CompTIA Security Plus, and they call it a boot camp, but it's really a normal class through the duration of a semester. It's just a class. We're doing a Security Plus class. But that's no fun. You can't market that. That doesn't sound nifty. That's not exciting. I want excitement in my certification. Well, it's not just a class. It's a boot camp. See? Now there's some gravitas. Now there's something happening in this class. It's a boot camp. We're going to look at Security Plus and we're going to do push-ups. I don't know what it means. That's what we call it. It's the boot camp. So sometimes you will run into those. Those are perfectly reasonable. Taking an entire semester to learn the topics associated with Security Plus, that's a pretty good class. And if they're using the term boot camp, I'll give them a pass on that one. Fine. I'm fine with that because the structure of the class is really conducive to learning the content. There's an instructor, you're sitting down, there might be equipment, you might be working with a firewall, you might be configuring a network, you might be doing something that's actually practical, and you've got other people in the class to talk to about these topics. You can all work together, you can study together, you can learn together. It's a very, very good way to learn this content. So if you hear the word boot camp, make sure you qualify it first, and then try to understand if it's a real good way for you to learn personally, because it might not be. It might be well outside the scope. It might not be providing you with the information you need. It may be too short of a time frame to be useful, valuable, or provide any of that. It's one of those situations where each time you see this, it might have something different applying to it. So make sure that you also are looking at their definition of boot camp and know what those differences are. You don't want to be caught paying money, because if you look at the cost of these boot camps, these are $2,000 boot camps, $3,000 boot camps, $4,000 boot camps, and they will offer you the world. They will tell you magical things will occur when you attend this boot camp, that the sky will be bluer, the grass will be greener, the air will be that much sweeter because you took a boot camp. They can't guarantee any of those things, and none of those things are very specific, so they can't be held to any liability smart by them, but it also may not be helping you very much. So make sure you are familiar with those. Not everybody is really looking out for your best interest. So make sure you look out for your best interest. That's going to be the important part. Well, I hope you don't mind moving a little bit of overtime in today's after show. Maybe it's because it was the last one of the year. We're not going to see each other until 2026 next month about this time. So I just wanted to make sure we had enough time together to go through some of those questions. It has been an amazing 2025, and it's been amazing because you are amazing. From everyone here at Messer Studios, we cannot thank you enough for the things that you have done throughout the year. You've joined us on this crazy journey. Hopefully, we've been able to provide you and help you with information that's going to help you get that IT job or get a better IT job. That's what we come to work every day, hoping that we're providing for you, hoping that we're giving you a foundation, an opportunity, some tips and tricks, things you can do to help better yourself, to better your situation, to give you things that you can provide for yourself and your family. This IT world that we live in has such potential as you're just starting out. In many ways, I am so jealous and envious of you just getting into this because there is a whole world of interest and fun and career ahead of you in this industry. It's something that will be with you for your entire career. You're seeing people wanting to get into technology and learn about technology all the time. And we're just hoping that we can be a little part of that for the things that you do. Not only have we enjoyed doing that in 2025, we have a lot of great things coming in 2026. We can't wait to share those with you as well. We're so glad that you're able to join us on this journey. If you ever have questions about the things that you're doing, we are always available in our Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. You can also use that contact us link at the top of our website. Hopefully I can get back to you within that 24-hour period. We try to get back to everybody who contacts us. We want to thank you so much for joining us in this year. Thank you for joining us in this 1 hour of our study group. We appreciate your time and your questions. We hope to see you again in 2026, and we hope you have a great holiday season. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.